about election 2016 was that Hillary Clinton, in fact, won the popular vote when all the votes across the counted.
Here we go. Here we go. Alright, how's it all coming through? Pretty okay? Will you just check it's also on Facebook as well?
But the thing is about New York, people are there, and they're ready over to the same people does that. They're getting back and stuff, that's taking over that magic number. But the thing is, there are so many of these various parts that are central, and we know from research they're not going to afford to segregate. So we're going to have to be patient with this. So let's set up and look up the early vote perspective where we might be focusing on the early part of the night. So we might be focusing on North Carolina, let's close it all time. Let's for argument's sake, again, no given, so let's put North Carolina in blue, if we put Florida in blue, and these two counts do well, and all the main parts will go at the beginning of the count, when guided to the opposite.
Is it all working on Facebook or everything else?
What if we put in Arizona, which also vote, we put 258, and then we start focusing on the investigation during that very, very closer. The point I think we have to note is that Donald Trump has to win Florida to get into this race. Has to win all these states in the South to get into this race. The one thing about Florida is no Republican candidate has won the White House without Florida since
Well, that's what I wanted to know. Have a good night. How much do we do this when you get up?
The states where surviving on states from Donald Trump, and the states that Donald Trump has taken the Democratic side.
We knew that stuff more years ago, and Trump and Hillary Clinton's campaign over the other day to help lead to the result.
Yeah, do you know what? I actually quite like this one. And quite a nice little squeak. It's quite good.
So let's go to
I was going to say this was my birthday race, but I just couldn't resist this for the election.
Hi Andrew, yeah, as you said, Florida is a critical swing state, involved in that is really possible, well as it always is. I'm joined now by Kevin Cooper, who is a Republican, working in Miami. Kevin, how concerned are you who manages going to
fairly confident. You've seen in how forced with the president with it's not going to be a 30,000.
Oh, come on, Ron. If anybody knows about climbing around tonight.
We have to make it for it. We're seeing that throughout the country last night. It's actually Sunday night. We got 10,000 people come down to support the president at the Oaxaca Airport. There's just a level of enthusiasm and support that is difficult to gauge, but it's definitely out there.
Why do you think there is some confusion on the Are there any new voters that we're seeing?
There are new voters, a lot of first-time voters, a lot of people who previously been registered and they decided to vote before because they hadn't found a candidate. That's why you see, like I said, 30,000 new first-time voters compared to Democrats who had 15,000 in Washington County. So percentage-wise, it's a lot of voters who are coming out to support the president.
I think it's fairly confident, but we know Florida is always a tough up, even if a candidate gets, 1%, it's either the landslide. How can you be so sure that you've got it?
I saw it in 20 more weeks.
The coronavirus, for example,
That'll be fine.
really test people.
Cheers, Rob.
Specifically on election day today, where votes are really been different. This week we put Republicans in the top or Republicans in the top. We're seeing a lot of Republicans come out fairly strongly, both in Miami-Dade County and up north in the northern part of the state.
Big Donald Trump with stats hits in Florida.
If it is Florida, I don't know, I can't, I'm not just fortune telling, but I do know that if it is Florida, it will be challenged. If there is a vote, the big Florida, for example, is going to actually to that vote in certain elections. So it would trigger automatically and there is that. We had it last year, we had 2018, we had it 2021. So it is something that is possible, but I think Donald Trump is fantastic this night. Great beyond challenge.
So you don't trust the polls at all and suggesting that Joe Biden is in the lead. We know it's not an international now, but overall you don't believe that.
In certain states, Joe Biden's ahead. In certain states, Donald Trump is ahead. Michigan, he's up by 3. Wisconsin, he's up by 8%. So
Thank you so much. The polls will be closing around about 15 minutes time. We should start getting some early counts in, and that will give us a sense of how the presidential race is shaping up.
in Miami, thank you.
Florida. Let's just come back to Florida. Anyone with a memory of American politics, back in 2000, it was only 537 votes that separated George W. Bush and Al Gore. One of them became president and the other didn't. So Florida's always tight this time around in 2022. Larry Sabato is professor of politics at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. He joins me now. Larry, thank you very much for joining us. I have here on my phone texts from people close to the Biden campaign who tell me they're feeling very confident, and texts from people from the Trump campaign who tell me they're feeling very confident. Who should I believe?
You shouldn't believe either one, although I must tell you, I've always thought Trump had an edge in Florida. There are a lot of moving parts, many of them moving in his direction, but it's going to be close. Florida always is. It will drag on. If it's close enough, there'll be some kind of recount or recount. Anybody who thinks it's going to be in the draft is in for a big disappointment.
Okay, Larry, we have access to exit polling, which is when people stand outside the polling stations and they ask people who just voted about issues, about who they are, about why they voted, that kind of thing. They give us a sense of the demographics, if you like, of the electorate and what's important to the American electorate. And I just want to bring up one of them, which is ask people what the most important issue was. There you see it, racial inequality, 21% of voters said that was the most important issue. The coronavirus, 18%, and the economy, 34%. Larry, what surprises you about those numbers, and what does it tell you as an indication of what voters, which way voters might move?
I don't think it tells us very much because the economy is the magnet to which a large majority of Trump voters go. Trump has been emphasizing that as the main argument that Trump voters and campaigners use to support the president. The other two issues you mentioned are primarily Democratic.
Where to go? There we go.
So you add them up, and in fact, it's pretty close between the two sides.
Larry Sabato, we're expecting a big turnout, bigger than normal, perhaps one of the biggest turnouts of modern times, since the Second World War. Does that help Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden?
Oh, it depends on where the turnout is coming from. Now look, every study that we've done so far says that the early turnout is disproportionately Democratic. About 60% plus of the early voters voted for Biden. However, as those same studies show, that 60% plus of those who voted today, the official election day, are for Donald Trump. So you see, in the end, a vote is a vote is a vote. As Gertrude Stein might have said, as you've been in politics, all votes are equal, and we have to wait until we count them.
When you look at the way American demographics are going, it's becoming a younger country, a more diverse country, a less white country, a better educated country. A lot more people now than they had even 4 years ago. All of that would seem to suggest that the demographics are going the Democrats' way. Yet it still seems at times to be a struggle for them to capitalize on that. Why?
Because many of those groups do not register in large numbers, and of those who are registered, they do not vote in large numbers. That's not true in every election, but it's true in many elections. Ask Hillary Clinton, and she had a better turnout among minorities and young people. We'd be talking about her election battle today. So what you said is true, absolutely true.
Cheers, you, thank you.
Look good for the Democrats, but there's no substitute for organizing well and getting your people out to vote. Politics is the same everywhere, at least in democracy.
Yes, that was what we wanted to do, and thank you very much for that Virginia story. But they wanted to see you watching and thinking about Virginia during the course of the because that demographic shift that you spoke about, Andrew, Virginia was declaring the frontline, right? It was where it already happened. By the way, Mary Sabato has a crystal ball that defines elections, so let's talk about that in the
Pennsylvania, another key swing state. It was the one that Trump currently was the top 4 years ago. Clive Meyer is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, hi there, Andrew. Hi there, Cathy. The state, the Commonwealth, barely won by Donald Trump in 2016. Something like 44,000 votes, less than 1% of the Biden camp. Feeling pretty confident they can.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that, mate.
Another way, and Joe Biden has had.
I'm sure I'll speak to you throughout the night. I'll be awesome.
Months, we are well beyond the margin of error, something like 4 to 6 to 8 percentage points, and the mathematics are clear for the Biden team. Keep all the states that Hillary Clinton won in 2016 and retake the Rust Belt states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and of course here, Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. So they're feeling confident about that. What has the president got to do? Well, he's got to hope that his voters get out in massive numbers and have done so far today. We're hearing this precincts reporting something like 90% turnout. So lots of enthusiasm, lots of people heeding the call from the president's camp to get out there and vote on the day. And that, frankly, is the only way he's going to be able to overturn what seems to be a big advantage in the early absentee ballots and failed votes that predominantly seem to have gone the way of the Democrats. Philadelphia here, Pittsburgh, the big cities, that's Biden country, so the dogfight is going to be in the suburbs. I keep an eye out on the night for Erie in the northwest from here, and also Northampton, Minnesota, to Philadelphia. These are two bellwether counties. They flipped from President Obama in 2016 to Joe Biden to Donald Trump. But in the Senate race in 2018, they flipped back to the Democrats. So they're bellwether counties that is worth looking at. But the big question here is the massive amounts of nearly I'm starting to count them. We're going to start doing that tomorrow, so start today. That means it's going to take some time before either Joe Biden or the president can find out whether or not they won, and they might have to find that out until Friday.
Yeah, Pennsylvania could be the thing that is picking us up for days and days and days, giving us all a headache by the end of this week, I suspect. With us throughout the night are some of America's finest political strategists. We'll introduce them as we go along, but first of all I want to speak to Marianne Marsh, who's a Democratic political strategist in Boston, Massachusetts. And Marianne, let me pick up on what Andrew was talking about with Larry Sabato, because this is such an interesting question. And I think it's a question that a lot of our viewers around the world might have. The demographics of America are shifting in the Democrats' direction. Donald Trump is one of the most unusual and perhaps controversial presidents that the country has ever had. And yet, this may turn out to be a struggle for Joe Biden. Why? What is it about the makeup of the country itself?
Well, Larry Sabato put it just right. It depends which state these votes are in. And certainly the country is moving towards the Democrats in terms of demographics, voters of color, which is why Georgia's in play tonight, Texas is in play, Arizona is in play. Democrats have a great shot at all of them. It would be shocking to win a place like Texas. Georgia looks like it could happen. But ironically, Joe Biden also is going to rely on white voters tonight as well. The bigger the share of white voters he gets, the more likely it is that he's going to win, especially in states like Florida, believe it or not. If Joe Biden gets 40% of the white vote in Florida, he probably wins Florida. I mean, Florida's always the devil of the Democrats, and it's a tough state, and Obama won it, but Democrats won it since. But those are the things you have to look at. And when you look at the turnout, which was shocking, 100 million people.
No one in today markets there. It's going to be a long night for the polls, so it's a war.
Voted in 20.
And it's
there are projections
I'm going to try to stay up for straight to Florida, I think, which will be about 4 o'clock when that closes.
Which would break all records, and as an American that makes me feel wonderful. But what you have to look at isn't all of that. When that happens, if Donald Trump is relying on turnout today, he has to outperform on election day 15 plus percentage points in every place that matters, those 9 states that we're going to decide this election.
Let me bring in Brian Lanza, former advisor to President Trump. He's been Alexandria, Virginia. Brian Lanza, isn't the truth is that for the president to hold on to the White House, he's really going to repeat what he did 4 years ago. He's going to win the same states. He has only one route to the White House, and it's through Florida and Pennsylvania.
Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. Like me, he needs to strike twice for President Trump in the election. He has to win the table in Florida. He has to win North Carolina, go to Georgia, go to Pennsylvania, Ohio. I think he'd get away with not winning Wisconsin or Michigan, but he would have to win Arizona. But we're certainly, their strategy. I talked to those guys today. They feel they've done all they can, and I think there's this general feeling like they're waiting for lightning to strike again.
But here's the point, right? Lightning doesn't strike us. Much of that
as well, but we'll see where we are. I mean, that's where they are. I think
we're in for a very special night if you're expecting lightning to strike twice. But it is a special night. Thanks to our panel, we'll be back for you. Cathy, it's amazing, remarkable how much America changes even in the course of 4 years. So there are 5 million fewer Americans without college degrees than there were 34 years ago. The country's got much younger. This is now the first election in which the baby boomers are not the dominant demographic. The millennials and Generation Z are now the biggest cohort in the demographic. It's a younger country, it's a better educated, it's a more diverse country. These are all changes that are tough for the Republicans.
Yeah, and that younger generation, Andrew, are much more liberal than their parents were, perhaps even at their age. They are more in favour of gay rights. They are more aware of racial injustice in the country. They are more interested in climate change issues. And they are more interested in economic inequality in the country. So if you see how they are driving the country, it is in the Democrats' direction. The question, I think, for the Republican Party is, can they either expand on Donald Trump's base, bring out those voters that Donald Trump managed to find in 2016, more white, more working class, more white men, or can they reach out to a different demographic? And that's going to be the challenge for the Republican Party in the future, whoever wins really this election tonight.
And it becomes a sort of war of differential turnout. Mr. Trump's base is smaller, he has to squeeze that and get that out. Mr. Biden's base is bigger, but he needs to get it out as well. It's at 7 p.m. on the eastern seaboard of the United States.
Okay, here we go.
States have closed their polling. We can bring that to you now. Georgia, Virginia, South Carolina, Indiana, Vermont, and Kentucky all closed their polls at 7 o'clock on the eastern seaboard. Let's have a look at some of these states now that the polls have closed. Indiana, a strong state. We're just waiting actually, I'm jumping the gun here, but actually we've got it. Now we can project that Indiana is for Trump, no surprise there. 11 electoral college votes, he won it strongly in 2016, looks like he's going to win it strongly again. Only 7% of the vote counted, but our projection suggests that he is going to hold Indiana. He needs to hold.
Cheers, Natasha. You have a good
Some
time.
of the other states that came out at 7 o'clock tonight, Kentucky is too early to project, but it's a likely hold for Trump. He's already a little bit ahead there. There's only 12% of the vote counted. That is likely a southern state to stay in the Trump camp. But if Trump needs to stay in the camp. The key state of the first 6 that have closed their polls is Georgia, because that is in contention, unlike the other 5. Georgia is too early to project at the moment. They haven't really started counting. And Kathy, this is one of these states. We were talking about the changing demographics. Georgia, a southern state, a deep southern state.
I've lost me internet.
Supposedly a Republican governor, Republican House, Republican...
Oh, I know what you mean, Natasha. Who knows?
Younger people, more urban...
That's why I was just doing this tonight, because I'll be up watching anyway. So I might as well do some production.
It is now in intention to some degree.
Oops.
Yeah,
Keep forgetting.
you couldn't even have anticipated, right, 5 or 10 years ago in America. I want to talk more about Georgia in a second, but let's just see where we are, because we now actually do have some results, which is fun, on our electoral college barometer. 270, remember, that's the number they need to win. Joe Biden in blue, he's on 0. Donald Trump in red, he has now notched up 11 of those. This does not mean very much at the moment. This does not mean, for example, that Donald Trump has won the White House again, because those 2 states, as Andrew was pointing out, Kentucky and Indiana, they are states. He won Indiana by 19 percentage points back in 2016. He won Kentucky by a whopping 30 percentage points back in 2016. If he had not won them, I think that the earth would open up and swallow both Andrew and I whole, because we would have been that gobsmacked if he didn't win them. So these are states we absolutely expect him to win. Georgia is such an interesting state to talk about. 5 or 10 years ago, I really wouldn't have thought Georgia was going to go into the Democratic column. It is still the South. I mean, it played a pivotal role in the American Civil War. It feels very southern when you go there. But, as you said, Atlanta, the main metropolitan area in the whole state, 63,000 people have moved into the city of Atlanta alone over the course of this year. So in 1 year, they've added 63,000 people. That makes the state more urban. It makes it younger. It has a disproportionately high number of young people voting. All of those are right. And all of those are things that feel more democratic than Republican.
And it is a young state, as we were saying, Kathy. 50% of the electorate is now under the age of 40. And that tends to help the Democrats, if they can get them out to vote. This has always been the problem. Baby boomers, you can't remove them so easily. They keep on turning out to vote in huge numbers.
Yourself, Andrew.
Even if they get, oh, you're too young to be a baby boomer. You're more like Generation Z to be, Kathy. But it is this war of differential turnout. Can you get these younger people who are kind of in the driving seat if they vote? Can you get them out?
And remember, the margins are tiny, right? We're talking about 10,000 votes in one state that can make all the difference.
Very close. Let's go now to Barbara Usher in Wilmington, Delaware, where Joe Biden is. Barbara.
Yes, hello from Wilmington at the Chase Convention Center, which is the headquarters for the night for the Biden-Harris campaign. The night is young. The first polls have just closed. And with me to get an early take on all of this is Tom Harris. He is the chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Thank you, Mr. Harris, for joining us here.
historic evening.
Sorry, give him a microphone.
So, okay,
Is his name Tom Paris?
what about you? Are you still cautious given
Is his name Tom Paris? Even looks like Tom Paris and Voyager as well. Tom Perez, same thing. Hi Ryan, so you to join me.
We have a linear pathway of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And
Yeah, I played some bets earlier, Natasha.
in those states in 2018, and we've been working hard to actually, but there's so many more.
Who knows?
Georgia, North Carolina. I spent the weekend in Texas, which is absolutely in play. We have Iowa, we have Ohio, we have Arizona. And what all of the states I just mentioned have in common, those are the states that Donald Trump won. We're playing offense, he's playing defense. We have
What
multiple
do you think
grounds.
that you're playing offense now?
Have fun, Ryan.
I mean, the Democrats
I'll speak to you soon. We don't have any of the election results up here, so, you know, enjoy your later. We'll still hide from it.
You know, a generation ago, diversity was mostly black and white. Today, there's a huge Latino population, huge Asian American population. The 7th Congressional District is a perfect example of that. That's metropolitan.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
And you see
We'll see you.
poised to win.
The bloke and the kids.
Again, that's 20 years ago or 15
I need
years
to go
ago.
costume shopping tomorrow before lockdown.
And
I've got 5 more to get.
Stacey Abrams, candidate for governor.
And then I'm done.
She has invested so strategically in registering voters and the excitement there. You look at the Atlanta area, they exceeded their 2016 totals in the early voter roll. So everything they've done today is above and beyond the 2016. I think enthusiasm and turnout when it's high like it is, and it's historically high this year, that's going to help out.
As the night progresses, I mean, you sound quite cautious, but where will you be looking cautiously, or will you be looking for signs that things going perhaps in the direction you don't want to go?
Well, and every state has a different answer to that.
What's the top priority for you? What do you want to get?
The turnout is really the key for us. We're looking at Latino voters, for instance. In the early vote with Latino voters, 8.6 million Latino voters voted early. 4 years ago, it was 4.2 million. So Latinos have awakened across this electorate in Texas. They've awakened in a huge way.
Yes, but they're also voting for Donald Trump.
Well, actually, if you look at our goal is 70% of Latinos across the country. That's what Barack Obama got. When you win, in the aggregate, when you win a community by 40 points, that's kind of a blowout. And that is our goal. I think we can do it. Donald Trump, the day he walked down the escalator of the Trump Tower, was disrespecting Mexican Americans, Latinos generally. He wanted to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland, and what he's done at the Mexican border. People in Texas remembering that, the disrespect he has shown. And that's why, again, when you ask your question, what are we looking at? We're looking at turnout among key constituencies. And what we're seeing in the Biden coalition is it's a combination of hardcore Democrats, right-wing Democrats, independent voters, and
Tom talks a lot, doesn't he?
It's a really broad coalition. Donald Trump is very narrow.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. Tom Perez of the Democratic National Committee. Thank you very much for
Yeah, well, that's a flying new spaceships, Tom.
Thanks, Barbara. Thank you.
So let's go back to our panel of experts. We've got Amanda Renteria, she's a former political director for Hillary Clinton. She's out in California. And Ron Christie's with us, former special advisor to George W. Bush, and he's in Washington, D.C. Ron, I want to start with you because I mentioned earlier to our viewers that we get these exit polls which tell us the kinds of things that people are interested in. They also tell us quite a lot in granular detail about the demographics of people who have voted this time around. We have exit polling out in Georgia that Andrew and I were talking about just earlier, and I want to bring you the types of people who have been voting for Donald Trump in Georgia, because we're seeing some interesting shifts there. It confirms to them, people say they're Republicans, people say they're white evangelicals, white men, etc., etc. Here's what I want to talk about. The people who are white evangelicals, you know that they have been full constituents of Donald Trump. They really drove him to the White House in 2016. And if Donald Trump wants to win the White House again, he's got to hope that he's got good turnout again amongst white evangelicals. In Georgia, white evangelicals make up about 1/3 of the electorate. But look at this. He's getting 84% of them. That might sound cracking. But it's actually 8% less, down 8 percentage points compared to what he got in 2016. Will Donald Trump win the White House again if white evangelicals don't turn out for him in big numbers as they did in 2016, Ron?
Good evening, Steve. Yes, I believe he can win in Georgia. This is a really difficult state for Republicans to really were in 2016 and previous election cycles. There are more younger people, there are more diverse people. But keep in mind also that we have 2 Senate races, not 1. 2 Senate races that are on the ballot tonight. We have an incumbent Republican senator who's fighting a strong Democratic challenger. And of course, we now have an open seat with the incumbent Paul Walker who's fighting to hold on. The question to me becomes, can the Republicans take significant inroads in communities of color, mixing forward with communities the president has been doing better with people?
I see him off.
Can we make inroads with younger voters? If we can do that and still get the percentage of the evangelical voters that you mentioned, yes, Donald Trump still has a good path to the state of Georgia.
I mean, interesting what you say about people of color and African Americans and Latinos who might be attracted to Donald Trump's message, Ron, because he spent a long time out during the course of his presidency, indeed, particularly courting African American men and Latino voting men as well. Is there a natural home, do you think, for some of those voters?
Body makes you smile. We all need to smile today.
I think actions speak louder than words. People of color around the United States before the coronavirus hit us recognize that we've got the lowest number of unemployed African Americans since 1969, similar figure with Latino voters. And if I'm a person of color, which obviously I am, and I look at this and say, who has delivered in less than 4 years, who's been making promises for 40 some odd years, we might want to give Donald Trump a chance. I think there's a path to that.
Let's go to Amanda Renteria. She joins us now. Amanda, we're putting Georgia now into the toss-up category, which is probably the first time we've done this for a long time in the presidential election. We would think
No problem, Robin. I appreciate you popping in.
it only went 5% for Mr. Trump in 2016. But I suspect that the Democrat will be encouraged that Georgia tonight is in contention.
I am incredibly encouraged, but yeah, I have to say, 2018 it was also closer. When Stacey Abrams ran for governor, she was 2 to 3 points away. And so it's moving in this direction. There's been a lot of work behind the scenes on infrastructure, et cetera, to make sure to get out younger voters, communities of color. And I have to tell you, while we want to talk about economics, I understand that that's certainly what Republicans want to talk about. What's happening on the ground in a lot of these communities is the effects of COVID. Not only are Black and brown communities part of essential workers, but they're being affected by COVID in their own families.
Yeah.
And that has really
I know by the time I finish we won't be anywhere near, but
Trump or any of the
still keep you entertained for a little bit.
actually care about this growing community out of Atlanta and the suburbs around Atlanta. And that's what we're seeing make a real difference. It was already moving in the direction. So adding in the impact of COVID has really changed not only now, but going into the future as well.
He said, when you look at Bill's move to Biden poll to change the share of the vote, the share of Black women and Black men has actually come down a bit according to our exit poll. But he's gained most among graduates, up 10% there in the share, and those earning under 50,000. But it seems for some reason to have lost the under 30s. It's a pretty mixed picture as to how the route to victory has been. And of course, we don't yet know if it is a victory until it's a toss-up and we can't yet call it.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. They've done a lot of work within the colleges all throughout Georgia. Really, Stacey Abrams started that work in her governor's run and has continued it through. Other piece that's been interesting is these 2 Senate races has garnered quite a bit of attention. John Ossoff really built out his own base, and I think you're seeing that as well in the numbers. in terms of who's coming out, where they're falling. And I think there's another aspect here, which is Trump now has a record. So people are taking a different look than they were in 2016 and wondering what's happening in Georgia. And so I'm curious to see if these numbers continue to come in. What do those Atlanta suburbs look like, and how are the strategies around college-educated, around educated communities really moving the needle in Georgia?
Amanda, Ron, thank you for that. Kathy, the Fox News Network is projecting Virginia for Joe Biden. No great surprise there, but the interesting thing is that it was a southern state. They used to be very red, wet purple. It's now pretty blue, pretty solidly in the blue color. And I guess that's what the Democrats hope, that this may be the start tonight, if they get Georgia, of Georgia following
They're quite similar states, Virginia, southern, like you say, big role in the Civil War. You go around the state, there are rural areas of Virginia that still feel very like the deep south of the United States, and yet there are these big northern suburbs outside Washington, D.C., far more Hispanics, far more Asian Americans, a lot more college-educated women who've moved into the area. All of those groups that vote Democrat. We were speaking to Harry Hamilton down at the University of Virginia, beautiful university, Thomas Jefferson's University. I have a son who is studying there, and he wants to be associated with that white southern institution. I go down there now to Jew, and it's full of people who live in all Virginia. It's Hispanics, it's Asian Americans, it's people from all over the world, and that is how Virginia has changed. It's also how Georgia is starting to change as well. And let's go to our correspondent Larry Madoa, who is in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's another state that is changing as well. North Carolina, a state that has Barack Obama won, but went back to Donald Trump. He won it in 2016. The Democrats think they can get it back this time, Larry?
Actually, they think they can get it back, but it's really complicated, like you mentioned. Barack Obama won here, but only once, because they also did vote for Mitt Romney in 2012, and that was the one bad guy called Barack Obama. So North Carolina has picked presidents 3 out of the last 4 times. This time, the polls are really tight. Some of the polls have Joe Biden leading very narrowly. This time, one recent poll that came out in the last 24 hours had President Trump with a very narrow lead within the margin of error. This state has 15 electoral college votes. President Trump has been here 13 times. Joe Biden has been here 3 times. They're all hoping that they can take North Carolina. And for President Trump, if he loses North Carolina, then there's lots of red flags and warning lights across the dashboard, because this should have been a solid state for him. Let's try and figure out what's happening in this state and what 2 conservative voters who are supporters of the Republican Party and President Trump. Larry Rainey, my namesake, is the vice chair of the Conservative Voice of North Carolina, and Kimberly Marshall is a Charlotte resident and runs the closest conservative on Facebook. What are the issues that were important to you this election? First, Larry.
Also safety, as well as school choices, as well as healthcare.
And Kimberly, what mattered most to you in this election?
What's most important is that I feel like in America, period, our liberties and our freedoms are being threatened by socialist agenda. So I believe Donald Trump is the person that will call.
Oh boy.
So that's
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot.
Socialist agenda, the way you understand it.
With socialism, it actually, to me, it takes away incentives to be productive. Socialism is a way, a form of income redistribution. So you have, and I personally feel like that has really spurred, in particular, black communities, welfare is a form of socialism, which doesn't mean that there shouldn't be social safety nets. I believe in it. But the way our system, I believe, is set up, it de-incentivizes production. And one way that has happened in our community is that it's taken fathers out of homes. And then we have a lot of fathers. So when we de-incentivize people's productivity, being accountable, it really does hurt family, and it hurts at large the community.
What appeals to you about President Donald Trump as a black man in America?
One of the businessmen, he's a businessman, not a president, so now he's out of police. So he acted very secretly in Washington. With bad policy, bad stuff.
Yes, indeed, Judith.
I have negotiated, but also he comes in not owing anyone anything. So as a result, you can be your own man, but also you can get the comments out and still get the comments.
A lot of this because of President Trump and his campaign for race baiting, for racist dog whistles, for some of the statements that he makes. And they say African Americans, people of color should not support him. Your reaction?
That is free. What we've done more for black community than any other president that I've known in my life. Two, again, he is who he is. And so we can't deny that, but also, again, he's not answering.
Oh my God.
Who's winning North Carolina?
I think that's
The polls are really tight. You think he's got it?
Yes, because today, at the polls today, even though Charlotte is blue, or our county is blue, the rest of the state is very red. And from what I was hearing, there's a huge turnout in the rural areas. And I think they're going to vote.
We'll see what happens. Thank you both, Kimberly and Larry.
Larry, thank you very much. An indication of how tight this might be from the Trump campaign point of view. The president has 11 times in recent weeks, and the state who took that suggests that he wants to hold it and he needs to be there in order to hold it. What's very exciting, sometimes defensive, it's sometimes offensive.
Indeed it is. It's interesting too, the spin that's coming out. So the Republicans are sounding more confident about Florida, and the Democrats are now sounding more confident about Georgia because it's looking a bit better for them there. And that's not how we really would have started the fight. We would have done the real problem with Florida. But there's a consolation prize if the Democrats lose Florida, and Georgia going back to the prize.
But we should keep reminding people, Andrew, that we've got the on-the-day votes that might be counted very fast in some states, and then those millions, 100 million Americans voted early, and lots of them voted by post. Those have to be a terribly time-consuming process.
It took time, though, I have to say.
Out of the envelope. Sometimes it has to be taken out of a second envelope. It has to be opened up. It has to be scanned. The signatures have to be checked. You need two people because no one person is allowed to be left alone with a ballot at any time. It can take a long time to go through all those votes that have come in by post, and that's why we might get one state looking like it's going one way, and then it can change during the course of the night, which is why Andrew and I can keep this around.
I'd be very careful with which all the states too. Joined now by Mary Trump, psychologist in Boston, and also a relative of Donald Trump. We welcome Mary Trump. We have no idea yet who's going to win this election. But if Mr. Trump loses, and loses clearly, there can be no doubt about it, how will he take it?
Well, thank you for having me. That is the only good scenario in this election. He will be so narcissistically injured by a decisive Biden victory that he'll have no choice but to spin it in such a way that he can save face, perhaps by saying that he was the best thing that ever happened to America, and since he didn't win, we don't deserve it. Something like that.
So who will he blame?
Everybody but himself. I would not like to be one of his closest advisors in the event that he loses, but I think generally speaking, he'll blame the American people.
How much credence do you put on this speculation that if he loses but narrowly, and there's a difference between the people who voted on the day today for him and the mail-in votes that are counted later, you will have words to say about these votes. How much credence do you put on the speculation that he may not leave the White House? He may dig in and say, I won on the day, that's the result that matters.
I don't know what will happen in terms of his having to leave, but he will do everything in his power in the meantime, because remember, we have 79 days to live through between the election and the inauguration. He'll do everything in his power to get the voting to stop, and he has a lot of powerful people in his corner to help him in that end. But don't be, let's not be mistaken here. If the opposite happens and it's a close win for him, if it's a close loss for him, he will
stop the vote. He'll want the vote to continue. If it's a close win for him, he'll want the vote to stop. So he has no problem with hypocrisy here. We just have to hope that it's a decisive Biden victory, so there's no question of illegitimacy. And then I would say, if Donald doesn't concede, if he doesn't accept the results, it doesn't matter if he accepts the results because it's not up to him.
Now, as I say, we have no idea what the result is going to be. Will he be re-elected? As most sitting presidents tend to be re-elected, only two in recent times have not been. But if he has lost, what can he do for an encore? What does a post-President Trump do in the rest of the sentence?
Well, I think the New York Attorney General and the Southern District of New York will have some say in how Donald spends his retirement because, from what I understand, he has some potential crimes to answer for, and I think that will be in his future.
Do you think it's possible that if he's lost, that in 4 years' time he could seek a Republican nomination again? Do you think he's got politics now into his system because he wasn't most of his life he's not been a politician at all? Do you think he's been taken, will be so wounded by losing that he could well run, which under the Constitution he would be entitled to do, in the 2024 election?
Oh yeah, it's happened before. I think it's extraordinarily unlikely. He would be 78 by then.
But Joe Biden is 78, and he might well win today.
True, but the difference is Joe Biden seems like a quite healthy person who takes care of himself. Donald doesn't exercise, he has a horrible diet, and he never sleeps as far as I can tell based on his Twitter account. So, I don't know that he would have to start him. And honestly, I think that there will be so much going on in the next 4 years for him, most of it not particularly good, that I don't know that there would be any incentive. And I think it's been clear to me for a long time now, he does not enjoy being in the Oval Office. It doesn't suit him. I think he enjoys the protection it affords him, but that's about it.
Mary, there are an unusual number of people who have left this administration. They've written kind of tell-all books about being in the White House. You're his family member. You've also written a tell-all book. And President Trump's response to the people who used to work for him, and to you as well, is that they're just disgruntled people. Why did you write a book about your uncle? Did you just have an axe to grind? Were you a disgruntled member of the Trump family?
No, although I had a fair reason to be. But no, if that had been the case, if I had been writing this for some form of revenge, or if I'd been writing it to cash in, I could have done it 10 years ago when he was still quite a public person with a very high profile, and it would have been a lot safer. I wrote this book as a concerned citizen. I knew that Donald was going to do a lot of damage to my country. I did not anticipate, however, that 100% of the Republican Party would support him at every turn. So it seemed like every day things were just getting worse and worse, and I felt it was my responsibility to help the American people understand who he was, how he came to be this way, and what we could anticipate in the future. And, give them information they did not have in 2016, so nobody could go into the voting booth today and pretend that they don't know who Donald Trump is.
Trump, thank you for being on this BBC US elections.
My pleasure.
Let's get more from Christian Fraser, who's at the touchscreen, even has a few results to plug in for us, Christian.
This is just to show you, for those who aren't familiar with the college Harry world, so you know that Indiana has been fully projected for Donald Trump to run electoral vote goes into his column. Remember, that is the number that one of these two men has to get to tonight, 270 or more, which is the keys to the White House. Now, I want to show you some interesting things. We've been talking about the changing face of America in the last hour. Virginia was the quintessential bellwether state, but of course, these days it's much more of a Democratic poll. You'll see here that it's been getting more and more Democratic since 2008. And I want to talk about the absentee voting, because in this state we've seen over half of the vote was early, and it skews heavily 18 points towards the Democrats. So as they start to count that, we're going to see Joe Biden's lead start to extend over Donald Trump. And there's every reason, looking at the pre-election poll and the backfield, to suggest that tonight Virginia is going even more Democrat than it was under Hillary Clinton. Let's talk about Georgia, because they mirror each other in so many ways, as Callie said. And again, there's a really important figure I want to show you here, it's this one. So what you might get through the course of the evening is Donald Trump going more into the lead as the in-person vote is counted. Georgia has already said it would probably take around 2 days to count those ballots that came in, all of those mail ballots. Look how much of it was mail ballots, 78% of it. And this is why, I wouldn't say the Democrats are doing it, but this is why. Because when we look at how this is skewed towards Joe Biden, as that is counting over the course of the next day, you're going to start seeing Joe Biden catching up with Donald Trump in the poll. There's a bit of other information that I want to show you on here as well. Of course, we've already talked about Indiana. Kentucky, important Senate race there tonight. Mitch McConnell, the Georgia Senate leader, is up for re-election to the presidency. We watch that, and also South Carolina. But those two are really red. I've also seen some data, can't show it yet because the polls are still open for another half an hour in Florida, but some of them are closed at 7 o'clock. They've already counted 51% of the vote in Florida. It's been tipped into the voting machine, that enormous early vote in Florida, and I can tell you it is on a knife edge. It is neck and neck with half of that ballot already counted.
Kristen, I commented more on Florida. It is the one state that I'm getting messages from people close to the Trump campaign, and they are telling me that they feel very bullish about Florida on the Republican side. So let's see what we get when we do those for the polls closed.
How's the first 5K done?
Republicans are getting a bit excited about it. I think partly because they think they've done better than expected in Dade County, which is the Miami area. That's normally a Democratic territory, so for them to do well there means that they think they're in with a chance. But it's a very diverse state in Pinellas, another county, which you might have expected to go to, because Mr. Biden has been doing as always with Florida, until you've counted the south and the middle, the Tampa Bay corridor and so on. You can't be sure what the result is, but we're crossing.
Somebody once described Florida to me as Alabama in the north, New Jersey in the south, and Ohio across the middle. It is that different in different bits of that state.
Exactly, Cuba in the south as well.
A little bit of salsa.
We are across it, and we will bring you the projection the moment we feel we are able to do so, but not before. Let's get the latest news with Tina Tahili.
Thanks, Andrew. Counting in the US presidential election is underway in several southern, western and eastern states as people choose between incumbent Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden. So far, President Trump is projected to win Indiana, a traditional Republican state. Other states are still too close to call. After crisscrossing the country the last few days, the president is back in Washington and will watch the results in the White House. Earlier, he said winning was easy, but losing was not, while Joe Biden has pledged to restore what he called decency and honour to the White House. Will grant what next?
Billions of dollars spent, months of campaigning, and almost 100 million votes cast before polling day itself. This has been a race to the White House like no other. All of it against the backdrop of a global pandemic that has claimed 230,000 American lives. For some, Election Day has been a chance to prove and reflect. Certainly, President Trump's challenger has presented this vote as a referendum on the unpredictable presidency and the 4 years of deep polarization and division.
I don't know, ridiculous.
Joe Biden, often mocked by the president from his advanced age, made his final call for votes from his childhood home on the crucial battleground, Pennsylvania. President Trump's course for victory was narrower even than in his unlikely win 4 years ago. But he has upset the odds in the past and insists he hasn't prepared a speech, either for victory or defeat.
Winning is easy. Losing is never easy. After me, it's done.
So it all boils down to these coming few hours, and the question which the United States, indeed the entire world watching on, is asking: have the American people opted for 4 more years of Donald Trump, or consigned him to becoming the first one-term president since George Bush Sr.? Will Grant, BBC News, Washington.
Americans are also casting ballots for seats in the US Congress and are choosing new governors in 11 states. Most sides are on the third seat up for grabs in the Senate. Opinion polls suggest the Democrats have a chance of capturing the upper house after 6 years of Republican majorities. If they do, it would help Mr. Biden a legislative program working to win the presidency and hinder Mr. Trump's plans if he gets a second term. The House of Representatives is expected to stay under Democratic control. In other news, the government of Austria has confirmed the attack in Vienna was carried out by just one gunman. He's been identified as a 20-year-old son of migrant and dual nationality, who'd previously been jailed for trying to join a jihadist group in Syria. 4 people died after the open fire on Monday evening. An elderly man and woman, a young male passerby and a waitress, while another 22 people were wounded. Police have since carried out a series of raids and made 14 arrests. Argentine football legend Diego Maradona is to have routine surgery for bleeding around the brain caused by a head injury in the next few hours. The 1986 World Cup winner, 60, was admitted to the Penza Clinic in Buenos Aires on Monday, suffering from pneumonia and dehydration. And he is being transferred to the Nuevos Clinic in La Plata, where the operation will take place. Doctors say they expect him to make a full recovery. The government of Poland has delayed bringing the ban on abortion in almost all circumstances. It comes following 2 weeks of mass protests since the High Court ruled terminations due to defects in the fetus were illegal. The government spokesman said there is a need for peace and more discussion around the judgment. Hurricane Eta has lashed Nicaragua and Honduras, leaving widespread damage in its wake. The Category 4 storm with winds gusting at 140 miles per hour, that's 225 kilometers per hour, has caused several buildings to collapse. There are warnings of life-threatening storm surges, flash flooding and landslides. There is, of course, much more BBC News online and on your mobile. You can use our live results map to see all the votes in every US state as they come in. That's on our website or the BBC News app. That is the latest BBC News. Now back to US 2020. Just past 7:30 here on the east coast of the United States. We at the top of the hour we'll get quite a lot more states that close their polls, and then we'll start to be able to get a few more results coming in, we hope, as well. But let's take a quick look at where we are so far on that move towards 270. Remember, they need 270 to win the White House. Donald Trump has 11. That is 11 electoral college votes that he's already scored up. That's what wins in Indiana and in Kentucky. Joe Biden so far has 0. The night is very young. Don't read anything too much into that. We're just going to start filling that in as the hours roll by, and eventually one of them, we hope tonight, won't get still on there, we'll get to 270, but we can't even promise you that because of this extraordinary election in the time of the pandemic, when some of the votes were cast today on polling day, but lots more, 100 million are cast early, either in person or by post. All of those have to be counted as well. And so it's terribly complex. Some of the states count from today, some of the states have been counting on for weeks, and some of the states start counting on tomorrow. We'll get the complicated with this election system.
Not if you try to make it so. Sometimes I think they try to make it so. Each state. I blame the Constitution. Maybe we're not going to do that. We'll talk about the Constitution. But the Constitution gave the states the power to set the election rules, and that's why we've got so many different election rules. The one state, try to forget, it's got 1,600 different counting areas and 1,600 differently designed ballots throughout the state. you wanted to make it more complicated, you struggle to do that. The early results we've already projected Indiana. No surprise there for Mr. Trump. Others have projected Kentucky for Mr. Trump. He'd be in real trouble if he didn't win that. And Vermont has been projected for Mr. Biden. Again, no surprise there in any of these that Mr. Biden taking Vermont, the home state of Bernie Sanders. 65% of the vote counted in Florida. Mr. Biden is just a little ahead at 50.4. Trump at 48.7. As you were saying, Kathy, if you move that a little bit further north as the votes get counted, it does become more Republican, which is why the Republicans still think this is their state, or it won't be until the votes are counted. Now, a state that Mr. Trump won quite comfortably in 2016 was Ohio, one of these other Midwestern Rust Belt states. This time it's still been leading to Mr. Trump, but it is in contention. So let's go to Anna Foster. She is in Cleveland, Ohio.
This is the bellwether state, Andrew. It's predicted every president correctly since 1964. And here is something that the Republican campaign will really be focusing on tonight. No Republican has ever won the White House without winning Ohio. That's not to say it can't be done, but it means that if Donald Trump manages it, he will be rewriting history at the same time. Now, as you say, this was comfortably won by Donald Trump last time round. An 8% victory in the region, around 445,000 votes. The states to really look at tonight, when you drill into it and look at the different counties. I'm in Cleveland, this is Cuyahoga County, solidly Democratic. What Joe Biden needs to do here is really build on that. He needs to pick up some of the votes that Hillary Clinton lost here back in 2016. But it's worth watching places like Stark County in East Ohio, where back in 2016, Donald Trump turned a 0.5% loss into a 17% victory. So these are some of the areas that we'll be really focusing on in the next few rounds. Now, you mentioned those 100,000 votes which have already been cast. Some of them are behind me here in these blue bags, ranged up on the shelves here. Ohio is fortunate to be one of those states that is allowed to start looking at them in advance. So these have all been scanned, they've all been loaded into a computer, and in around 15 minutes time or so, the first results will start to come through, and they will be looked at very carefully by both campaigns, no doubt.
Okay, Anna Foster. I love all those blue bags behind the polling station. There's been a lot of criticism over the course of this year and about the polling service, the postal service here in America, because at one point it was horribly slow. I would send a letter or parcel to my daughter in Chicago. It could take 10 days to get there. So then of course everyone was saying, wow, postal service isn't up to it. We're in a pandemic, the postal service has to be quicker. And the postal service turned around and said, we can handle this fine. We handle Christmas every year. And that gives us a huge amount of parcels we need to deliver. So but let's see, there have been concerns just in the last few days. In fact, today there was a ruling by a judge that some of the polling stations that were before the posting stations that were post offices that were performing badly, they had to tighten up their act and get better by the end of polling times today. So postal service under a little bit of scrutiny here at the moment. Let's look again to Marianne Marsh, Democratic political strategist. She's in Massachusetts for us, Brian Lander, who worked with Donald Trump on his campaign back in 2016. Also with us, Marianne, let me start with you. I'm sure you're getting messages from the campaign as we've been on air. What are you watching? What are you seeing? What should we be focused on at this stage in the evening?
I think in many ways, unless we get a surprise out of Georgia, which looks like their results are going to be delayed because of a water main break somewhere, or Arizona or something like that, we may be in for more of a traditional evening than we might have thought otherwise. I think when you look at the country, you look at people feel very good about Michigan. Well, so there's the easiest route for Joe Biden is to hold out, and Christian said this earlier in this evening, to hold out the Hillary Clinton states and then to add 1 point to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That's the easiest route for Joe Biden. There are a bunch of other combinations in the Southwest and the South that he can do versus Donald Trump, which is one and done. He loses any of those Southwest states, or out of Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. He has to win one of those, and Michigan Michigan and Wisconsin look like, they'll go to Biden in my estimation. So, and it could be several days when we look at the states that really matter here. So for all the talk of winning a Georgia maybe or a Texas, Georgia's still sitting there. I don't know about Texas, but I think everyone's going to be looking at North Carolina in the hours to come. East Coast, that will be a big deal. That's a state that Donald Trump has to win. So I think that's what you're starting to see versus a big new different map.
Let's bring in Brian Lanza, former advisor to President Trump, Virginia. Brian Lanza, if you know on the defense of Georgia, I don't say you've lost it, but it's clearly in contention. And Virginia is now pretty much in the blue corner, used to be in your corner, not now. And North Carolina seems to be in contention too. What does that say for the Republican Southern strategy? You're losing or struggling to hold on to states that you used to be able to count on as night follows day.
I mean, it's not Richard Nixon's Republican Party anymore, that is for sure. Listen, I think the dynamic of Georgia coming into play provides a lot of challenges for the Trump campaign. In order for them to win, they need to make up the Georgia ground. And the easiest place for them to look at the map is probably going to either be Wisconsin or Michigan. I think Michigan's out of reach. I think Wisconsin's probably in play, but it's probably leaning towards Biden, so they need a huge surge. You know, Florida's going to go Trump. North Carolina's a jump ball. Trump to get there is a very thin line he has to follow. He has to be error-free through most of the night. And the first threshold is Florida. It looks like they're going to hit that. It's going to be picked up in Georgia, but they can make it up in Wisconsin. But North Carolina is critical in the next couple hours to see if this is either going to be a long night for Joe Biden or a short night for Donald Trump.
Does it not trouble you as a Republican strategist that America is becoming younger, more diverse, more college-educated, and your party has real trouble with young votes? You don't get them. Ronald Reagan got a majority of the under-20s in 1984. You have a real trouble with non-white votes as well, and you have real trouble with college-educated. In other words, the direction the country is going in is exactly the opposite of the direction the Republican Party stands for.
Yeah, the party has to adapt. I mean, they have to bring more diversity in the party. I myself am a Hispanic American, Latino American, Bolivian father, Mexican mother, so the parties adapt. The core principles stay the same. Conservatives of small, limited government, individual responsibility. But as they adapt their message, they're going to have more people delivering that message. Not here, on the BBC. That wasn't the case in the 15 years ago. So obviously the party is adapting and developing the right messages to hit these markets.
Why would you not have been on the BBC 15 years ago?
If there's a Latino Republican, there weren't that many of us that were out there. Now it's different. Now you see more Republican Latinos, more African Americans, carry the Republican banner that makes it more, that gives a larger pool of the candidates dressed like the appear on television and talk like the Republican Party.
I just wanted to check that it was your fault, not our fault. Because we'd be delighted to have you.
You're always welcome on BBC.
Years ago, we'd be delighted to have it. Marianne, Brian, let's just leave it for the moment. We'll move everything away. Kathy, we can now project, as I said earlier, others have done this. We are now doing it. One is projecting for Joe Biden. Only 3 college electoral college seats in the Mountain State. It was always going to be for this kind of time. There's one very
This is a fun slide to look at, guys, because look, it's only 5% of the vote counted, and yet we are still projecting it for Joe Biden. And some of our viewers might say, "Oh, that's calling that seems terribly reckless." But it'll be because we know that Vermont is very heavily Democratic. It went for Hillary Clinton, it went for Barack Obama, and also you might want to know where those votes are. If they're votes that are coming in from big populated areas, then they would suggest how the rest of the state is going to go. So anyway, Vermont being called for those 3 electoral college votes to Joe Biden. Let's speak to Martin Luther King III, human rights advocate in Atlanta, Georgia, and of course also the son of Dr. Martin Luther King. Thank you, Mr. King, for joining us. During the course of this year, several things have dominated the headlines in the United States. Of course, there's been the coronavirus, there's been the collapse in the economy, there have been fires outside in California, but there's also been throughout the course of this year after the killing of George Floyd, racial protests, some rioting, some looting, but a lot of focus on race and police brutality in the United States. How much has that been a factor on people's minds as they went to the polls today?
I certainly think that is a huge issue, certainly in the black community and community of color. But if you look at all the demonstrations around the nation and the world that occurred right after George Floyd, it clearly says that this issue is important to many Americans, and I would say most, quite frankly. And so probably the issue that may end up being the most important is what the pandemic is doing to our nation and the world, what is going to happen in relationship to the economy. But right behind that is racial reconciliation. I think many people want to see racial reconciliation and racial equality and justice.
Given that, if this evening we don't see a large turnout amongst African Americans in this country, would you feel disappointed that we went through that moment in America where everyone seemed to be caught up in the story and the focus on police brutality towards African Americans, particularly African American men? Would you expect them to turn out? If they don't, would you be disappointed?
Well, when you come back to American men, I think it's been very clear that there's been some concern about the participation levels. But I think that African American women overwhelmingly will have shown participation. And I think African American men will be not too far behind. Could there have been more? I think we have to wait to evaluate that. And certainly, I'm always disappointed. I'm certainly disappointed a lot in the leadership of President Trump, or some would say the lack of leadership, whether it's around the pandemic, whether it's around the issue of climate control, whether it's around acknowledging that science exists. Those are things that are very disappointing. And if we're going to move this nation up...
Yet Mr. Trump has made a big effort to try to reach African American men in particular. This is a voting group, African American men, that he's made a point of courting, not just during his campaign, but during his presidency as well.
I didn't understand your question. I missed your question.
That Mr. Trump has been reaching out to African American men. Do you think we could actually see a swing amongst African American male voters towards Donald Trump compared to last year?
I don't think you're going to see a significant swing, but I think that, yes, he has been courting African Americans, and there's a population of conservative African Americans who certainly are going to support President Trump. There may be a few points, but I do not think overwhelmingly African Americans in general and men are going to, I believe, support those who vote, support the Biden-Harris ticket.
Okay. Mr. Kemp could bring up the poll that we have here, which has asked people, an exit poll, that has asked people whether the justice system treats Americans fairly, all people fairly. 39% say that all people are treated fairly. 54% say black people are treated unfairly. And I think that's what's interesting, because that is a change. More people are saying that black people are treated unfairly in the United States. Do you think that this could actually also have an impact? The issue of Black Lives Matter could have an impact amongst white voters? Would you see perhaps some white voters more than last time saying this matters to them too?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think that that may be one of the factors. Again, if the Biden-Harris ticket is successful, that certainly is one of the factors that made it successful, because you saw so many young white people voting who probably who are supporting the Biden-Harris ticket.
Yeah, I mean, when I was covering those protests here, one of the things that civil rights leaders said to me was so different this time around, this year compared to other times, was that there were a lot of white people taking part in those protests as well. But what doesn't seem to have happened, Mr. King, in this election is that the emphasis on racial inequality in the country hasn't increased. Look at this exit poll that we can show as well. There is no difference in the turnout of black men and black women. To get back to what you were saying, The Black Lives Matter movement has not got black men and black women to the polls in greater number than it did in 2016.
You know, I think you're using exit polling, I assume. And I just think we have to wait and see. Yeah, I think we have to wait and see the numbers, because I mean, our polling is not always totally correct, but I think we have to wait until the end of the day to see. But I also believe that when you add all of the other dynamics, like seniors, some have left President Trump. When you add suburban women, some have left President Trump. So you add all this coalition together, it perhaps will create a victory for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Okay, Mr. Martin Luther King, thank you very much for joining us there from Atlanta, Georgia, a state that we are focusing a lot on tonight.
Indeed. Well, there's been a little bit of a hitch there, and it was mentioned earlier on with one of our guests. There has been a first water pipe. I never thought something so mundane as a first water pipe would get in the way of American democracy, that it is delaying the final count in one of the key counties. It's Fulton County, part of Atlanta. A tenth of all Georgians live there, and it looks like the count's being delayed because of a water pipe burst in a room. The officials say the good news is no ballots were damaged. Well, I'm sure that stopped the lawyers beginning to slavor across.
Second pitch of the day. Because in North Carolina, people should already have taught you, by the way, the polls closing in North Carolina. They were meant to close at 7:30 here on the East Coast. But because some polls opened late, until Friday, if you look for the time you overslept or what, they now have had to add another 45 minutes to their polling time, which seems to typically use North Carolina closing just a few minutes ago.
81% of the vote has been counted in Florida. Joe Biden is now on 39%, 82% of the vote. He's rising as I speak. 82% of the vote now been counted. Joe Biden on 39%. Donald Trump's on 50%. The New York Times is giving Donald Trump now a 95% chance of winning Florida. They wouldn't be doing that if they didn't think Florida. So it does seem to be moving this way. And just to remind you, winning Florida is not enough for Mr. Trump to remain in the White House. He needs to win it. And that alone does not guarantee he stays in the White House. What would really be a big help is to win Florida and Pennsylvania. But we don't know when that will be. Michelle Kennedy, who is in Philadelphia, is the straight to Michelle.
Thank you. Well, I'm here with Rebecca and Kevin Belmont, two Republican voters who come in from just outside Philadelphia. So much has been made this election about suburban women voters. Really key for Biden.
It feels like it's only interview Republican voters.
State from Donald Trump who won it back in 2016 by the serious margins. What is it about him that has you back in
There's the ones in Florida, there's the ones in Pennsylvania,
for his policies.
we have the ones in Georgia.
The economy has been so much better during the Trump administration versus the Obama administration.
I'd love to go on Twitter about this, but I was going to say I'm banned at the moment.
Much the same as the Obama. And the first election I voted for him as well. And the reasons were a little bit different. I thought we could really use a strong businessman to run the country. I actually voted for Ross Perot back in the early 90s, I think he ran. He was also a businessman, didn't make the cut. So I've always had that thought process as an outsider.
And you mentioned back in 2016 there was sort of more of a silence voter. But this year, I mean, I think we had a picture, you paid and got together 50 women in your area for a Women for Trump Summit.
Yes, I had already planned on voting for Trump again for the past 4 years and delivering on what I felt were his promises, and my bottom line was better for it, other things were better for it. When the whispers down the lane of socialism started to come in and get a little louder, I started to fear that we were losing our country, our freedoms, and the American dream.
What is your top issue this election?
The economy is pretty big. I think that they're trying to make big in the coronavirus. I think what he has done, not being a doctor, listening to the scientists has evolved, sort of the story evolved, or how we're going to handle the pandemic. The economy, how it's rebounded, as quick. Our businesses have really suffered from
Pennsylvania, but then it goes to ballot on Stark County. That's all going to be seen. So the 2 days before we get any results from it.
Michelle, Philadelphia, thank you for that. Kathy, every time I look at the results sheet, there's another percentage point in Florida of the votes being counted, and it's just moved again. It goes Biden 50%, Trump 49%. Trump 50%, Biden 49%. This is
why we can't give you the results yet. And now, at the top of the hour, 16 more states will have their polls closing, so hopefully we will learn some more.
There we go.
So, it is 8 p.m. on the east coast of the United States, and we do have 16 more states where the polls will be closing. That means that we'll have 16 more states where we will start to get some of the results coming in. And some of those states, they are some of the big ones. They are the ones that we are looking for. Those battleground states, they include Florida is in there, Pennsylvania is in there. We hope that we may get some of those results in Pennsylvania quite quickly, because it is, in Florida quite quickly, because they've been counting those early mail-in votes for weeks and weeks now, so they should be well versed in this. And also Florida, interestingly, I only learned this the last couple of days, they have a history of voting by mail and voting early. Do you know why they ran? Here you go, this is quiz for you, guess what? I don't know. Why they vote early in Florida? Because of hurricanes. When we talk about water mains bursting, it's because of hurricanes that they vote early in Florida. So everyone had to get used to it. They've got a very well-oiled machine in terms of early vote counting, not counting 2000 vote counting, but they had this time around. So let's see what we can get out of this one. With those votes, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Florida, Maine, Delaware, Connecticut, and New Jersey. We've got New Jersey, which is too early to project, I think. We have.
I think we can put New Jersey in the Biden.
I think we put New Jersey, there we go. Not a shocker. 11 electoral college votes, that was Massachusetts as well. 11 electoral college votes, and New Jersey, we put that in the Biden column as well. But again, and Oklahoma coming up too. And Oklahoma we are putting ruby red, it is staying with Donald Trump. And what this means is that so far we still do not have a state that has changed from one to the other, and that is what we're really waiting for.
So let's look at what this means for the electoral college so far with the results in. As I say, no battleground state has changed hands, and every result so far has been relatively pretty much predictable. So it gives Joe Biden 44 electoral college votes, so Trump has 26 electoral college votes as things stand. One needs 270 to win the year, and we're obviously a long way off that. Florida needs to be resolved before we then start moving north, Kathy, to these Rust Belt states, as we call them, which were the key to Mr. Trump's victory last time round, but where in some of them he seems to be a little bit more Trumpian.
Yeah, but let's try and get more from Florida, because, as you say, that is key for Donald Trump. He's not going to win the White House. Unless a miracle happens and swept away a whole load of other Democratic states, but he's not going to win the White House unless he wins Florida. The poll has just closed there, so let's dig in a bit more. Christian at the BBC Big Board, what do you have for us that will touch you?
I've been trying to pay enough attention to you, Andrew, but to be honest, this has been taking my attention for the last half an hour. When I put this up literally about 10 seconds ago, Donald Trump had a lead in the vote of about 11,000 votes, and suddenly I was looking at my cheat screen here, Biden now has a lead of 24,000. It's literally back and forth. Why is it changing? Well, I'm going to show you this. I talked about this earlier in the evening. Look at that. That's a huge early ballot. In fact, there are around 2 million more votes in Florida this time than there were in 2016. 3/4 of the ballot was early and it skewed heavily towards Democrats. And that was tipped into the voting machines right at the beginning of the night. So Joe Biden had a lead in the poll earlier on. What they're counting now with that bigger turnout is the in-person vote. And that is why it's so close, because we know in Republican counties in Florida there's been very good turnout. The President's talked about it today. And so I think we're going to see this back and forth all the way through the course of the next hour. 84% of the vote counted so far. I also want to talk about Ohio, because this is really interesting as well. It gives you an impression of the other way around. In Ohio, in fact, this is what I was talking about just a minute ago in Florida, but when you tip into the voting machines, the early ballot, which you can see in Ohio, skews heavily to Biden, you will see that there, 45%, 10 points toward Biden. They counted that first, and that's when you see in a small Republican state, Biden with a 19-point lead. Now they're going to start counting in the first votes, and what you're going to see, 30% of the vote counted so far, is Donald Trump catching up in Ohio. Again, turnout really important in Ohio, about 1 million more people. However, looking at the exit polls for Ohio, remember that Trump won it by 8 points in 2016. It is now at this time. The gamble that Democrats took in the primary season when they chose an elderly man like Joe Biden, someone who could talk to blue-collar workers in the Midwest, is could he get white men to vote for him? And in Ohio, just looking at the exit polls, he has got 8% more white men voting for him than voted for Hillary Clinton. That's not to say that he's got white men overall voting for him. Right? This is a whiter, older statement now, but he's doing better than Hillary Clinton. And that could be true for him, of course, when we start talking about these other Midwest states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Remember, the only one Pennsylvania president had 44,000 votes, 11,000 in Michigan, 20,000 in Wisconsin. So he doesn't have to do a great deal, Joe Biden, with those black men. He just needs to get more than Hillary Clinton got, and that could be enough to carry Congress forward in this crucial battle in the states.
Christian, bring up Michigan for us and see what's going on there, because that's a state where there's been quite a lot of discussion about when they could start counting, and lawyers have got involved in that already over the course of the past few months. So what's going on in Michigan?
This is just agriculture, because as you were saying earlier, until we get 5% of the vote counted, we don't actually get the vote share on the screen. So I can't tell you an awful lot about that at the moment, so it just closed. So we will get that in the next few minutes. The thing to say about Michigan was that back in 2016, 40 million people voted for a third-party candidate. And what was really obvious around Detroit, now Wayne County, was that Hillary Clinton wasn't getting people out as Barack Obama had got people out. I'm looking at the exit poll here, there's a million more people who voted in Michigan. And it's that white man syndrome that we're just talking about, runs true through Michigan. Then that is why we're going to see, I think, positive numbers for Joe Biden. It's reflected in that average poll just before the election day. If it's like that, then I think Joe Biden will feel very confident about this continuation.
Christian, have you noticing that white male vote issue, Andrew, was always the theory of the case for the Biden campaign? There he was, remember back in the Democratic primaries at a time when we could actually travel to primaries and we'd all be together, and there were dozens of people up on the stage, and there were people of all ethnicities, and there were young people, and there were people far to the left of Joe Biden. He wasn't the most popular candidate, had a terrible time in the Iowa caucuses. He had a bad time in New Hampshire. You know, standing with one of his top advisors in New Hampshire rally, it felt like a race for his political career. And then he was saved in South Carolina and he became the candidate. And he stuck to the same message the whole way through that time. I am the candidate who's a centrist. I am the candidate who can clear away some of those white working class male voters who switched from the Democratic Party to Donald Trump. And he basically made that his campaign, and he didn't have to change the whole course of the year. That's been
The Joe Biden model will be very interesting to see tonight whether that pays off for him.
But he seems to be doing well among white voters, but he doesn't seem to do so well among Hispanic voters in Florida, which is why Mr. Trump is just marginally ahead. Republicans indicating that they're going to hold the state for Donald Trump. There is a margin, so we have to be very careful with what we do. Let's speak to Francis Suarez, the mayor of Miami, who's found that in the state of the four-day county, where so many votes are there in Florida. Why is Mr. Biden underperformed among Hispanic voters in your state?
Well, it's pretty clear that the argument against socialism is one that has taken hold and has been influential. You have to understand that Hillary Clinton won 98 by 30 points. Right now, as it stands, early voting and absentees and being counted, right now there's about an 8-point margin. Donald Trump is only losing the county by about 8 points. And the state of Florida, where previously Donald Trump won by 100,000 votes, he's ended the day today voting with about 190,000 vote margin statewide for Republicans. So he has to do very well in the case to win Florida with the independents, and that'll be the determining factor as to whether or not he wins Trump.
So are you saying that it's the composition of Florida's Hispanic population, that it's, whereas other states like Texas or Arizona, overwhelmingly the Hispanic population is there in Mexican American. In Florida, it's Cuban American, Venezuelan American, Nicaraguan American, Colombian American, and because these are people who may often have fled or left socialist countries, that makes them more Republican. Is that your argument?
That's exactly what's happening. You have 3 or 4 of the nationalities that you mentioned were former people that came or fled from communist countries. So Cubans, of course, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. So that particularly the new arrivals in most countries are definitely trending. We're seeing that in the turnout, and so that is certainly a reason why he's overperforming significantly in Dade County by a 22-point margin. And if he wins Florida, it could be because of 98 county.
Are there indications, though, that Mr. Trump hasn't done as well as last time among seniors? We've got plenty of seniors in Florida as well as plenty of Hispanics, that they were uncomfortable, unhappy of the way he's handled COVID, and that he hasn't got as good a turnout among them as he did 4 years ago?
I think that's true. I think the fact that he has been criticized heavily and made a lot of decisions that people have not particularly liked that COVID certainly hasn't helped among those populations. I think what they call the high school Florida, which is Orlando and Tampa, that went to Obama in 2008 and went to Trump in 2016, could also be decisive. So I think if you're looking at Florida, you should be looking at Orlando and Tampa, particularly Pinellas County, which has a tendency to choose the winner in Florida historically, and then also if we're to Miami-Dade County. I think it's going to be close, but if he does move Florida, it could be of those areas.
Your state's also had an influx because of the hurricane attack of Puerto Ricans. I think you mentioned the Tampa corridor. I think a lot of them have settled on that I-4 corridor. Have they tended to vote more for Mr. Biden?
Yes, I would say that they're heavily the Democrat. So you have, like you said, 2 sort of antagonistic forces. You have the I-4 border with a lot of Puerto Ricans close to Korea who are probably voting for Joe Biden. And then you have a lot of Venezuelans and who are right Cubans. The Republicans also registered 1 million more people over the course of this year. So you also have all that sort of coming together. And again, they can't think there's a lot more Republican voting. I don't know how that's going to play against other parts of the state. We'll find out shortly.
Did you say hand on heart that Donald Trump has been good for Hispanics in your city?
Well, look, I think he's spoken to some of the issues that we care about. And I think that's why he's getting that support. And again, I think Hispanics down here have fled socialist countries, and they're traumatized by that. They've lost everything that they have, the property. Venezuela, a great example, was the second wealthiest country in the world, and now 90% of people live in poverty. So, in Cuba, the same. So I think what's happened is that message particularly has resonated, and we're also seeing it down now.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor of Miami, thank you for joining us on the BBC on this very special election night. I'm just proud to see 90% of the votes in Florida has been counted, Kathy, and Donald Trump is still 1 percentage point ahead. That's it. It's 34,000 votes so far. I think this is what we could call an advantage.
I reminded you, didn't I, at the beginning of this, back in 2000, how many votes was it? Did you remember how it was 537? 537 that separated the two candidates. So I hope we are not in for that kind of a recount. What I am looking at is Miami-Dade County, where 86% of the vote has been counted. Biden's ahead, 54, to Trump 45, but Hillary Clinton won Miami-Dade by 30 percentage points. Biden at the moment owns less than 10 percentage points ahead of Miami-Dade. So that's getting super granular, but you know, it's worth keeping an eye on because those are the kind of places that are going to actually decide where Florida goes. We've got 3 more projections that we can give you. None of them what we would not expect. Tennessee's gone to Mr. Trump, Oklahoma, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maryland, Washington DC, and Delaware. They all stay in the Democratic. So let's go to Delaware because of course it is Joe Biden's home state at the moment. Chris Coons is the Democratic Senator for Delaware. He's in Wilmington. He joins us now. Senator Coons, thank you very much for joining us. You are very close to Joe Biden. You and Joe Biden have shared that Excella train from Washington to DC more times than I'm sure you can count, Senator. What are you hearing from the campaign? What are they feeling about the numbers that they're seeing tonight?
Optimism. I am hopeful that if every vote that's been cast is counted, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be the next president and vice president. We've had a record turnout, both in terms of early voting in person and by mail, more than 100 million. And the reports coming in across the country tonight are quite encouraging. But I'll remind you, here in the United States, our elections are called not by candidates, but by states and counties. And we've got a long ways to go yet until every vote is counted over the next couple of days.
Senator, you're up against a president who was impeached, against a president who was stoked emotions on the left that I have never seen in this country in the modern era, whose reputation around the world has diminished America's reputation around the world. If you look at the chart, just in black and white on the sheet, it shouldn't even be close, should it? And yet it is. Is Joe Biden not the right candidate? Are Democrats not offering the right message? Why is it as close as it is?
I think Joe Biden is exactly the right candidate for this moment in our nation's history, and I'm optimistic that this election will prove that out. Donald Trump has misled us in his response to the pandemic. He's divided us by his view, his approach to the American people, where he sees a division, he cracks it open even wider for his own benefit. And his bungled mishandling of the pandemic has made the recession worse and longer than it ever should have been. Joe Biden is someone who, by his personal experience, his character, his dedication to bringing people together, is just the right candidate for the Democratic Party at this moment, and I think the results tonight will show that.
If it hadn't been for the pandemic, the chances are Donald Trump may well have won the election. We don't know. He may still win it anyway. What would Joe Biden actually do differently? Because he's not going to be able to become elected and then wish the pandemic away. I fear that Senator Coons is not hearing us. Senator Coons, we will try to come back to you. If we can get this audio back again, I apologise for Senator Coons for not being able to hear us. It is worth pointing out that Senator Coons is one of the people, which I was hoping to ask you about, is one of the people whose name is being mentioned as a potential Secretary of State if Joe Biden wins. But it is that question that you had earlier in the evening, Andrew. And you look at all of the reasons perhaps that Donald Trump should not be re-elected, the fact that he got impeached, the economy has crashed, more than 200,000 Americans are dead from this pandemic, polls show America standing around the world at the time, and yet we are looking clearly for the tight race tonight.
It does puzzle me why the Democrats don't accept it. Because when you look at the trends in America, it should be going their way. said earlier, it's a younger country, it's a better educated country, it's a less white country than before. I mean, 5 million people who voted whites who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 are dead. So, unless they're in good county, they will be voting against.
But it's also a president who has not made much attempt during the course of his presidency to reach out to those people. He has continuously appealed to the base of his party. He's done it during his campaign. I don't think anyone...
BBC are basically saying, why is this supposed? What is going on? What are we not seeing?
That base of people.
Not just for that side.
Particularly interested in expanding beyond that, which is perhaps been a particular problem.
There are 5 million fewer people, even just 4 years ago, in America without college degrees. They tend to vote for Mr. Trump. There are 5 million fewer. There are 13 million more minorities and white Americans. 13 million with college degrees. They tend to vote for Democrat. But here we are gathered tonight, still looking at something of a struggle. The Democrats still not able to get Florida. I think we don't know yet. It's still open. But even so, even if they do, it's a struggle. And there are other states too where it isn't clear what's going to happen. So, in a way,
one of the exit polls that we had earlier said that the economy has been a very important issue for voters, and where does Donald Trump do well? He does well on the issue of economy.
I suppose a lot of people do watching this well, so I wonder, why is this young country, it's still a relatively young country, why is it with 2 old white men in their 70s is the choice for the American people in the country? We were talking about Georgia, half the people there voting are under the age of 40. The Hispanics and the Asian Americans and the demographic growing really quickly and yet, I mean, even if it had been Joe Biden, what would the alternative to the Democrat side? It was Bernie Sanders. She's in the 70s, or Elizabeth Warren. She's in her 70s as well. I think people are puzzled that this is the choice that America ended up with at that age. I mean, if Joe Biden is the next president, he will be the oldest president ever to enter the White House at the age of 70 years. One of the states that is in contention, up and around the Great Lakes, is Wisconsin. And Yalda Hakim is in the city of Milwaukee. Yalda.
Andrew, thank you. As you've been reporting there, a record 100 million people have voted in this election, either by mail-in or early voting. And almost 2 million of those were cast here in Wisconsin. And the officials here have been counting those votes. They started at 7 a.m. and we're being told that that will continue through the night. So whatever results we now see coming in from on-the-day voting that's taking place today may be slightly misleading because, as I said, those 1.9 million votes remain in view. Donald Trump won the state with a narrow lead, just 23,000 votes. That's less than 1 percentage point in 2016. And really, part of Donald Trump's story here in Wisconsin and within much of the Midwest is the non-college educated white voter. And I traveled up to rural Wisconsin where we met many people there where say that to support Donald Trump. So really, it's mixed picture here across Wisconsin. With me right now is Jesse Oppion, the opinion editor at the Capital Times. Jesse, thanks so much for joining us. And really, as I was saying, the working class voter here in Wisconsin is very much part of Donald Trump's story.
Yes, that's absolutely true. We've really seen in Wisconsin over the last few years, which the rest of the country has seen as well, a real cementing of this rural-urban divide, and a lot of folks in the rural areas of our state have felt like government has not served them well in the past, whether that's in Madison, in our state capital here, or in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump really tapped into that and spoke that language. One difference, I think, between 2016 and 2020 is Hillary Clinton, as a candidate, was not necessarily skilled at speaking with blue-collar voters. That is something that Joe Biden is able to do very well, so that could change things a little bit, but as you said, a lot of the voters who supported Trump the last time around, despite things like trade policies and tariffs that may have hurt things for them a little bit, they're still looking to support him this time around.
What about the virus? Because Wisconsin is one of the worst affected states in the country.
It is, and it's played a huge role. We've seen overwhelming majority of disapproval, actually, of the way that Donald Trump has handled the virus here. We had a record number of new cases between yesterday and today here in Wisconsin. It was almost 6,000 new cases, 52 deaths yesterday, and that's been the trend lately. And certainly there's some of that that we could talk about at the state level, but at the end of the day, I think people look up to the top to see how that's handled up there, and we've seen, I think, in the high 50s to 60s in terms of disapproval of how the president has handled that.
Would it be fair to break up Wisconsin between the urban metropolitan areas like here in Milwaukee and then the suburbs that are really the Republican base, and then, of course, the rural areas?
I think that's a pretty fair way to break it up. Obviously, the liberal strongholds are Milwaukee and Madison, the two largest cities in the state. There are a lot of sort of mid-sized communities in the 60,000 to 70,000 population range that can be a little more swing. Even the suburbs around Milwaukee, there's no big conservative stronghold, but just by sheer population, they do turn out a lot of Democratic voters as well. The farther north you go, for the most part, it tends to be a little more sparsely populated, tends to vote Republican a little bit more, but there are even a handful of counties up there that sometimes go blue.
The polls have been showing Joe Biden in the lead here in Wisconsin, so really it will be interesting to see what happens in the next few hours.
It will. Obviously, in 2016, the polls showed Hillary Clinton ahead too, so I don't think that any Democrats are counting their chickens before they hatch. They're not too confident yet, but they're in a solid place, I guess, at least data-wise going forward.
Certainly, we know that Wisconsin has been one of the states that's quite important to Donald Trump, and he obviously thought it was winnable on some level because he's visited here 4 times just in the last week.
That's right. I think early on when he pulled out some of the advertising dollars, people maybe saw that as a sign that he's giving up in Wisconsin. That's obviously not been the case. He's given back. It's easier for him to get that earned media and not have to spend those ad dollars because he passes the crowds. The show last night was proof of that. And so I think, the fact that he was able to flip the state for the first time in
The man's a moron, like...
he's got to that again. That's why it's in this time.
Oh, jeez.
Depending on the other states he picks up, they would be good for him.
Okay, Jesse, thank you so much for joining us. And as we were saying there, Wisconsin is one of the worst affected states in the entire country. That certainly is going to be on the ballot when people go in and as I've said, as they continue to vote. And the polls will be closing very shortly here in Wisconsin. Okay, now then, thank you very much for joining us. This statement was hit, of course, by the 2008 recession and now being hit again during the pandemic, manufacturing being hit because everything's been shut down.
We are able to project West Virginia for Donald Trump. We're quite comfortable there. No surprise there. This was in 2016. It's probably the second Republican state of the country. It's a poor state, poor white state. Depending on the fossil fuel industry, it is Republican territory. Above all, it is Donald Trump territory. Not a big population, 5 electoral college votes. The counting in Florida is continuing. 92% now counted. Mr. Trump still 1% point ahead, but that is almost 200,000 votes ahead. So it doesn't look like he is heading into pole position in Florida. But the Republicans will be delighted by that, so will Mr. Trump. But we should just remember, after speaking here to the mayor of Miami, Republican mayor, the reason may be closely related to the particular nature of the Hispanic population in Florida. It's more Republican than Hispanic population in states like Texas or Arizona or New Mexico. And that may not be relevant, therefore, for Mr. Trump's performance in Wisconsin, where he has worked, or Pennsylvania, or Ohio, or so on. So, just putting that bit of context in, just that little marker, let's cross over to Christian Fraser at the BBC.
Yeah, I think we're right to feel pretty good considering Trump's down. Right now, looking at these figures in Florida, it's 206,000. So lead, remember, he won by 110,000 back in 2016, and they are counting on the mail-in-day ballot, which does tend to be a bit more Republican. I think they like to vote in person. So this lead is stretching. And I was just thinking that Andrew was talking about Miami, looking back at my research for the 2018 Senate race in Florida, which Bill Nelson, the Democrat senator, lost to Rick Scott. He put vote share on and trying to get Hillary Clinton had won, but he lost vote share to Republicans in Miami-Dade. In fact, 8% he was down, then 8% more Republican Miami-Dade, and he lost by 0.2% to it. It was so narrow, but it was in Miami-Dade where he lost it. And of course, the Senate race is not a presidential race, but there are echoes of that we're seeing now in the presidential race this time. So Florida, I think, is starting to lean towards the Trump camp. Let me show you there a couple of the other southern states and some really interesting information. Let's talk first of all about North Carolina. One of those states that we've been talking about through the course of the night, becoming more urban around Charlotte and Raleigh, really the metro areas around those two cities that will decide this election. And here you see Biden jumping into the lead, and that's because the absentee ballots have been counted first. But look at the absentee ballots. 78% of the vote is early, and it skews Joe Biden by 10 points. So if you are in the Democrat camp right now, you're looking at North Carolina, that is going to be really close tonight. But maybe, only 60% of the vote counted so far. Maybe it is tilting towards the Democrats, albeit narrowly. Georgia talked about a little earlier, but if you're just joining us, let me remind you, 84% of the vote counted, not very much. They're counting the in-person vote in Georgia. It will take them 2 days to count the absentee ballot, but again, look at the absentee ballot, 78% of it, over 3/4, and heavily leaning towards Joe Biden. So what does that mean? Could we be looking at something rather interesting down here in the South? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put back up the map from 2016 and we'll get my marker and then show you something. Florida stays in red. We said at the beginning of the night, Florida had to stay red to get Donald Trump into the ballot. But if you're looking at that early ballot in North Carolina, what if we put North Carolina in blue? What if we put Georgia in blue? We might not know about it for a couple of days because it's taken that time to count the ballot. Arizona, which is polling very well towards Joe Biden, we're going to get that in the next hour or so. Look at that. 274, and we've not even talked about the Midwest. So that's why Georgia and North Carolina is so crucial. Even though Trump's camp will be celebrating about Florida, we won't like the picture of those two other southern states. Not at this moment in time. Can change, but that's how we look to them.
Christian, thank you very much for the update there. Let's get a quick check on the latest news with Tina's
Counting in the US presidential elections underway in several southern, midwestern and eastern states. Few countries operating in
It's 15k. Let's take a roll back. Have a break. Have a little weed. Go straight through for 6k. Have a fun.
Counting is extremely close at the moment. After crisscrossing the country in the last few days, the president is back in Washington, and watching results coming at the White House. Earlier he said winning was easy, but losing was not. Yet Joe Biden was placed to restore what he called decency and honour to the White House with March reports.
Billions of dollars spent, months of campaigning, and almost 100 million votes before polling day itself. This has been a race to the White House like no other. All of it against the backdrop of a global pandemic that has claimed 230,000 American lives. For some, Election Day has been a chance to pause, to reflect. Certainly, President Trump's challenger has presented his voters a referendum on the unpredictable presidency and the 4 years of deep polarization and division. Joe Biden, often mocked by the president from his advanced age, made his final call for votes from his childhood home in the crucial battleground of Pennsylvania.
And go Kansas State of Pennsylvania!
President Trump's path to victory is narrower even than in his unlikely win 3 years ago. But he has upset the odds in the past and insists he hasn't prepared a speech, either for victory or defeat.
Winning is easy. Losing is never easy. Not for me, it's not.
So it all boils down to these coming few hours, and the question which the United States, indeed the entire world watching on, is asking: have the American people opted for 4 more years of Donald Trump, or consigned him, becoming the first one-term president since George Bush Sr.? Will Grant, BBC News, Washington.
Americans are also casting ballots for seats in the US Congress and are choosing new governors in 11 states. Most eyes are on the third of seats up for grabs in the Senate. Opinion polls suggest the Democrats have a chance of capturing the upper house after 6 years of Republican majorities. If they do, it would help Mr. Biden's legislative program working to win the presidency and hinder Mr. Trump's plans if he gets a second term. The House of Representatives is expected to stay under Democratic control. In other news, the government of Austria has confirmed the attack on Vienna was carried out by just one gunman. He's been identified as a 20-year-old son of migrants with dual nationality.
I wish to get rid of the beer for this.
In Syria. 4 people died after the open fire on Monday evening. An elderly man and woman, a young male passerby, and a waitress, while another 22 people were wounded. Police have since carried out a series of raids and made 14 arrests. Hurricane Eta has lashed Nicaragua and Honduras, leaving widespread damage in its wake. The Category 4 storm with winds gusting at 140 miles per hour, that's 225 kilometers per hour, has caused several buildings to collapse. There are warnings of life-threatening storm surges, flash flooding, and landslides. The government of Poland has delayed bringing a ban on abortion in almost all circumstances. It comes following 2 weeks of mass protests since the High Court ruled terminations due to defects in the fetus were illegal. The government spokesman said there is a need for peace and more discussion around the judgment. Argentine football legend Diego Maradona is to have routine surgery for bleeding around the brain caused by a head injury in the next few hours. The 60-year-old World Cup winner was admitted to a clinic in Buenos Aires on Monday, suffering from anemia and dehydration. He's now been transferred to the hospital in La Plata, where the operation will take place. Doctors say they expect him to make a full recovery. There is, of course, much more BBC News online and on your mobile. You can find the latest details and analysis by our correspondent. You can also use our live results map to see all the votes in every US state and where they come in. That's on our website, bbc.com.uk/2020 or the BBC News app.
bbc.com.uk.
Now back to you at 2020.
We'll just create a new TLV that I didn't know about.
So it's just past 8:30 here on the East Coast. We'll get a whole load of polls closing in about half an hour's time, and hopefully we will start to get some more of those votes. We've been looking at Georgia, a state where it's tight, but the polling data processing process has been tied up there because of an automated pipe test in one area. So actually there's a hole of that, so we can't actually get some more information. We were hoping to get some of that earlier. But let's have a quick look at where we are in terms of the Electoral College and who's got where and how close we are to 270. The numbers are starting to be filled in. 42 for Donald Trump, and just ahead of him, 44 for Joe Biden. So at the moment, it feels a little bit like this race, doesn't it, Andrew? It's kind of, it's tight. It's tight between the two men, and we are waiting to get some more of those states. We want Florida, we want Georgia, we want North Carolina. We're being greedy. We want those states to give us some kind of results, because that is when we really stand to where it's going. At the moment, we keep updating on Florida. That is the big one to watch. It looks like it's still holding for Donald Trump, but if it doesn't hold for Donald Trump, then probably we need to win that election to get the White House, but at the moment it's good for Donald Trump.
Well, we don't want Kathy
We don't want any more burst cuts or any more hitches, because I'm also hearing that there seems to be some kind of counting delay in Virginia. So I don't know what's happening around America this evening, but whether it's burst pipes or broken air conditioners, things are getting a little slower than we might expect.
Sure, you're doing yourself. I think on Florida, 92% of the county, Mr. Trump leads by 230,000 votes. So it would seem as the night goes on that Florida is going to be Donald Trump's capture. Republicans are already claiming it. We don't. We don't do that on the basis of the party's claim. But there can be no question it is the way. Gary O'Donoghue is at the White House in Washington, D.C. He joins us now. Gary, the Trump team will be obviously very relieved. They look like they've won Florida, look like they've won it. But as you look at some of the other results coming in from the Rust Belt states, which they also need to win, the night is clearly not over for them yet by a long shot.
By no means. I think Florida, in a sense, is first base, isn't it, for the Trump campaign? They have to get to that to be in the game whatsoever. And as things are going, it's looking increasingly like that, with those votes coming in from the Panhandle, where Donald Trump tends to do better in Florida in particular. So that really is just the beginning of building.
I'll be tomorrow.
Gets into 270.
It's a bit annoying now.
Of course, at the top of the next hour, we'll start to see results coming in from places like Michigan or Wisconsin, the old blue wall, as it was so called. And that's where the real nail-biting, I think, will start for the Trump campaign. But they're obviously pleased with what's happening in Florida. We're hearing also, not officially at all, but through some of previous advisors like Kellyanne Conway, who's suggesting that the president may actually decide to say something to the nation from the East Room here later on tonight. He's had this sort of invited guests of several hundred people supposedly coming here for a party. He may say something from that. We're told they're possibly being screened and tested at the Trump Hotel before they come in. But that would be an interesting moment. Of course, that will be the moment people will be waiting for to see whether or not the president tries to make some kind of claim about the election before the data bears it out. That is going to be a difficult moment for the nation if he does that.
So just to clarify, Gary, we think the president might speak to the nation even before it's clear who's won. Because if he does that, that would certainly be an unusual development in an election.
Well, that's certainly been some of the reporting in the last few days, as he was planning to do that. You know, Andrew, he's been talking about the idea that all the votes should be counted on election night. You should know who's won on the night, and we know that's not the reality of the way it works here, particularly with all these mail-in ballots, and some states like Pennsylvania and others not counting those mail-in ballots till today. And so the results can look very skewed at this point of the evening and in the next few hours. But the president has been talking about that and potentially trying to claim victory. But we'll see what he does. The campaign on the call earlier on were a bit more circumspect about the claims he would make and when he might make them. I think Trump down that speculation suggests that they would go on the basis of the data. But of course, there will be enormously contentious moments.
I'm about to take the nose off, it was hurting me.
States where
but every format we're trying to do it.
All these things are ahead of us at the moment. But as we said at the beginning of this, getting to that first base with potentially taking Florida as we get towards the end of the there will be a huge moment for this White House, who felt that the evening, of course, could have been over a lot earlier for them if that hadn't happened.
These would have been over a lot earlier, Gary O'Donoghue. They're at the White House. And as he's saying, they need to win Florida, but it's not the end of the night for them. It simply allows them to continue through the night to see where other states they need to pick up.
Yeah, I'm worth keeping an eye on what Gary was mentioning there about whether either President Biden or President Trump or Joe Biden, Vice President Biden, comes out and decides they're going to speak early this evening, because there's a sort of game of chicken going on about each camp trying to ward the other off from claiming victory too early. They remember what happened back in 2000, and the Democrats felt back then that Al Gore conceded too early, and they've decided this time around they're going to take a very different tactic. It will be much more aggressive and much more assertive, a lot more lawyers hired on the Democratic side than there were in 2000, and if it comes to a legal fight, they say they are prepared to go the whole way. But in a way, you might set the tone for it with exactly what Gary was talking about, the president coming out earlier, even if he doesn't come out early and say he is claiming victory and has been re-elected. The fact that he comes out early in the history of the White House, and the White House, and makes a statement that sounds confident and victorious, that could be enough already to kind of tip some of the root music that you were talking about earlier, Andy. We're not there yet, as Gary says, but we could get there, and that in itself would be very unusual. Let's go to Joe Biden's headquarters in Delaware, and Nick Ryan is there. Nick, we're hearing there from the White House that they're feeling good about Florida, perhaps even feeling good enough for the president to come out and speak to the nation early this evening, before all of these results have been counted, even possibly. What are you hearing from the former vice president's camp? Is Joe Biden planning to address the nation tonight? Whatever happens?
This is what we... Yeah, the original plan that Joe Biden would come and address his supporters. They're having a drive-in event here in Delaware, in Wilmington, his hometown. And they haven't let the cars in. They're stood in the middle of this massive empty car park right now. But that was the plan. But today, Joe Biden said he wouldn't be speaking unless he had something definitive to say. So we're not quite sure at the moment. We do have a very full car park of hundreds of cars at the moment waiting to see Joe Biden. We don't know whether they'll see him or not. Interesting what they're saying about Florida. When I spoke to that super confident Biden advisor earlier in the evening, it was interesting. In the states that he was suggesting we look at, Florida wasn't one of them. They always thought that Florida was a toss-up. They're not putting their hopes on Florida. They would have loved to win it, of course, because it's a knockout match for that Florida. It's very hard to see a path that Donald Trump has to the White House. But their calculations aren't based on Florida. They're saying, look at North Carolina, look at Georgia. If I had $1 for every time a Biden person said about Georgia, then I could definitely buy 100 copies. And they are saying Georgia, look at Michigan, look at Wisconsin.
The Biden campaign still has more roots to 270, Nick, than the Trump campaign does. But if we were going to see a big blue wave sweeping across the country that perhaps would then help them flip the Senate as well, shouldn't we have started to see it by now?
Florida's such an interesting state, Caddy, isn't it? So many Democratic votes have been dashed in Florida over the years. They had such great votes for the state in 2018 in the governor's race and the Senate race. Those were dashed. Hillary Clinton, obviously, 4 years ago. Their hearts were broken in Florida. In 2000, of course, George W. Bush won that state. Very controversial circumstances, of course, by just 537 votes. So I think they've learned their lesson in recent times. Don't pin your hopes on Florida. And they'll be looking at other states. I mean, they're outperforming Hillary Clinton in places like Youngstown in Ohio. Maybe that's indicative because it's such a kind of Rust Belt community. The sort of people that Joe Biden was basically hired to win back. So maybe that is indicative. Florida is such a curious state now. Like I say, I think the Democrats have learned the lesson from the past. They do not pin their hopes on Florida.
Okay, Nick Ryan there in Delaware. It was so interesting to get to the end of this night, Andrew, and we find that Joe Biden has done better amongst white voters, perhaps even particularly working class white voters, than we might have expected, and Donald Trump has done better amongst minority voters, Latino voters, and some African American voters than we might have expected as well. So it's good for it.
And there are some indications of that, because we've seen Mr. Trump doing well among Hispanics.
13 minutes to each one.
Results, counties coming out of Ohio. Mr. Biden's doing well among white voters. So there are some indications of this happening.
Yeah, and that could be the upset that we had not anticipated, and it is exactly as I was saying earlier. It is why Joe Biden made the pitch during the primary campaign. He looked at Donald Trump's coalition, he looked at the weakness, he looked at where Hillary Clinton lost. She lost amongst white working class voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And he went to the Democratic Party and said, if you want to get rid of Donald Trump, I'm the one who can bring back some of those voters. I can hold together enough of the African American, Latino voting coalition, the young voters, they will come home to me, but I'm the one that can peel away some of those voters from Donald Trump. And if it pans out he does win tonight, that may well be, if you look at some of these numbers that are coming in, that may well be what he does.
Let's go back to our panel of experts. Amanda Huey, who's the former District Director for Hillary Clinton in in California. Amanda, why is it such a struggle for you? I mean, why can't you even win Florida these days?
Florida's always been hard, and the Biden campaign actually started the morning saying Florida is not, it'd be nice, but not the necessary path to victory. Florida Latino community is very different, particularly the new folks who have come in, but also there's been years and years of pounding on socialism and connecting Democrats to that. That's been a very difficult message to break, and we're seeing that again. But anyone in Democratic politics knows that you don't put your path on Florida, that it's an extra. And what you are seeing is this campaign has been incredibly disciplined about the march to the Midwest, making sure that he brings home those voters. And I also just want to say, as we do think about the Latino community throughout the Midwest, it's a different community. That's an American community, in a place like Texas and Arizona. You see the numbers, you see that differently.
Yeah, we know that the Latino community in Florida is different from what it is in Texas or New Mexico or your Mexican Americans in Florida. Even so, for a country for a party that has the demographics flowing with it, is up against a president that your base hates, not just dislike, hates. To be able to struggle in this way to win Florida suggests there is so far, I mean, you may still win, but there's still favorites to win. But there's no blue wave, is there? I mean, you're not sweeping the country.
There's no blue wave in Florida. I think there's still a lot of states to go. We're going to see what's going to happen in Wisconsin. When you think about our Senate candidates all throughout the country, you have North Carolina looking very good for Bell County.
About the House race,
Sarah Gideon. You have races that we are yet to see throughout the state. And again, the East Coast has always been that first couple of hours is very tough for the Democratic Party. Because the tone does get set by Florida. But ask anyone in Democratic politics, and we know that the path to victory is bringing home a lot of those states that we've had in the past and really worked with them. And Biden has done an incredible job. His team has done an incredible job in the Midwest. And I think you're going to see this. We've seen it in North Carolina. And we're going to continue to see a job.
We want some of those votes to come in. Thank you for the Ron, first and foremost, special advisor to George W. Bush. We've been kind of skirting around the Senate. We want to remind our viewers there is the race for the presidency going on as well, but there is also the race for the Senate and the race for the House of Representatives. The race for the Senate, at the moment, Republicans have 53 senators. Democrats have 47 senators, so they've got a flip depending on what happens in the presidential, either 3 or 4 Senate seats. Why is the Senate race important then? If you are listening to this program, watching it in Singapore or watching it in the south of England, you stayed up all night, good for you. Why should you care about the Senate?
Hi, Patty. The reason that the Senate race is so critical for Republicans, should they be able to hold on, is that the President of the United States under the Constitution has the ability to appoint senior officials to the government that they are appointed to be the vice and consent to the United States Senate. So you've seen that President Trump, for example, has appointed 3 justices to the United States Supreme Court. They can act the judiciary. They can appoint senior administration officials. If Mr. Biden wins this evening and it flips over control of the United States Senate to the Democrats, then that will give the ability for the Democrats to run the table. They can appoint who they want to the court, they can appoint these senior officials, and the Republicans will be powerless to stop them. That's why Republicans are very anxious this evening. They're looking at this and saying, we've got to hold on, we've got to have a break in case Mr. Biden wins, and a break on Democratic.
And Ron, are we getting any feel on how the Senate's going? Probably one way or the other?
Well, I've actually heard, believe it or not, that Susan Collins in Maine, her people are feeling increasingly confident, which would be a huge win for the Republican Party. We have 2 open seats in Georgia County. We've got Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, so there's going to be a long, anxious evening for those Republicans who say, when we at least put the brakes on to Joe Biden.
Okay, Mr. Ryan, thank you very much for having me. So let's talk about the program. Let's talk to Larry Sabato, Professor of Politics at the University of Virginia down in Charlottesville. Larry, thanks very much for joining us. We spoke about an hour ago. What are you hearing? How's it looking? What are you feeling at this stage?
Donald Trump scored a big win in court. It hasn't been formally called yet, but most of the Florida experts I know on both sides believe that Trump will be carried by big margins. The Florida never goes by big margins to anybody. Remember, that was the circuit breaker that Biden was hoping for. If he had won Florida, Trump's victory for re-election became nearly possible. Not totally possible, but nearly impossible. Well, now he's got it, and the pressure is on Biden to win a big swing state. Maybe he'll do it in North Carolina. Maybe he'll do it in Georgia, but he hasn't done it yet.
When you're looking at the numbers, what we're hearing, is there a reason he hasn't done it? Is it too close? I guess what I'm getting at, Larry, is if you had expected a big, resounding repudiation of Donald Trump's presidency and a big blue night, a big blue wave for the Democrats, wouldn't we have already seen a sign of that by now?
Not necessarily. We are very, very split. The vote is very partisan. It's exactly what we expected. Even a big win for Biden would probably be 6 or 7%. So no, the answer is no. This night has just begun. The next phase of the campaign has just begun. We've got tons of races yet to decide, and even talking about control of the Senate at this point is ludicrous.
Okay, you'll have to forgive me then, Larry, for being impatient. You know what it's like. We've been waiting. We want some. We're all
20 minutes, that takes us to 5K.
Results.
15K.
What are you reading into the exit polling data in terms of the groups of people who
Up to a clock, I'm doing all right, actually.
Donald Trump needed to run up his base, right? He needed to make sure that the white evangelicals, white men in particular, actually turned out in big numbers. Donald Trump wanted to make sure the Democratic base turned out for him. Are you reading anything into the polling numbers, particularly down in Florida, that might show us whether,
I'm going to pause it.
whether each side is getting their base out in the numbers they need?
Well, I think you have to say that for Hispanics, Donald Trump is doing better this time than he did in 2016. So that's a plus for him. He is doing somewhat better, 2 or 3 percentage points with African Americans. He is doing worse with senior citizens by 2 or 3 points. So we're seeing small changes. People are invested in their choice. They have been since 2016. And our own surveys show that 85% of Americans who were likely to vote were decided on this race 6 months ago. They haven't changed. There were 4% undecided. So, anybody expecting a lot of change, I think, will be very disappointed.
And yet, Larry, throughout the year, the polls have been pretty consistent, and Joe Biden's been pretty consistently ahead. If he doesn't win tonight, should the entire polling industry be fired?
Oh, if he doesn't win once the counting's done, which will take days, then I would think that we're going to take a big sledgehammer to the polling industry. I certainly will swing 2 or 3 times. So, yes, that will happen, but it's too soon to judge whether that's true.
Yeah, okay. I take your point, Larry. It's too soon to judge, and not all of the votes have been counted, and we have to remember, Andrew, that these votes, some of them have been mailed in, and the voting takes a very long time, and so whilst we might not be getting the results now because you and I are impatient, that doesn't mean very much. It just means we all have to wait and breathe.
We can now project Arkansas for Donald Trump. Solid Republican southern state, the home of Bill Clinton, of course, where he was governor. At one stage, he's pretty far ahead. Only 13% of the vote counted, but those that have been counted are pretty representative, and that means that Arkansas stays in the Republican camp. Florida, they're still counting, 93%, 94% now. Mr. Trump is on 51%, Mr. Biden on 48%. It's a big lead of 261,000 votes. It's even a little bit of a swing from Democrat to Republican compared to 2016 so far. We're not yet projecting that because Florida is a complicated state, and even with 93% in, we're not prepared yet to stick our necks out and rejected for Mr. Trump, and it is looking good. Let's go back to Miami. Nomia Iqbal is there. Nomia.
Yeah, I don't think it was going to be that easy, was it? I'm sure the Democrats would have loved to have won Florida because if they had, they would have delivered that first round knockout punch to Donald Trump. Joe Biden's path to the White House would have been much smoother. But I'm here in Miami-Dade, and what could have possibly gone wrong? Well, I think if you look at the Cuban-American population, particularly here in Miami, they make up nearly half of it. That message that Donald Trump has really been pushing about the claims that Joe Biden is a socialist, that's really pushed through, I imagine. Earlier in the month, last month, I was here, there was a bus tour that Donald Trump Jr. did around Florida, calling the Democrats socialists and communists, and that kind of thing really sends alarm bells firing up for Cuban Americans. Not for all of them. I spoke to one woman outside a polling station on the last day of in-person voting, and she said to me, actually, Trump, he reminds me more of Latin American dictators, especially when it seems he refuses to commit to a peaceful transition of power. But as you say, the votes aren't entirely counted. We're not at 100% yet, but as some of your previous guests have said, I think the Democrats do have a very difficult relationship with Florida, and so if Joe Biden doesn't win here, they will be looking to the Rust Belt.
Okay, Nomia, thanks for that. I'm just beginning to wonder, Kathy, whether obviously Florida, if it does, as it looks like it goes to Mr. Trump, it's a huge victory for him, maybe by more of a majority than he won his last time. But because of this distinctive Hispanic vote in Florida, I'm just beginning to wonder whether it really is sui generis, that it doesn't mean that Mr. Trump can therefore think he will repeat what he did in the Rust Belt states last time. If you remember, he came out of Florida last time and suddenly started taking hold Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and so on. The big early figures from there are not so good for him.
No, I think you're right. It doesn't follow that what happened in 2016 is going to happen during the course of tonight. And it also doesn't follow that the Latino vote in Florida is going to be copied in places like Texas, Georgia, and Arizona as well, because as you said, they are very different. Those Cuban Americans, those Venezuelan Americans tend to vote much more Republican, and there are more Venezuelan Americans than there used to be, so that could be another voting bloc that would be important for Donald Trump. So still watching Florida, but you're right, doesn't necessarily follow that it's going to go the same way.
It's 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. on the eastern seaboard of the United States. 14 more states have closed their polls. Let's have a quick look at them there. Polling has closed in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, various others. Interesting states there, which we'll come on to in a minute. But I can tell you, this will not exactly shock many people, but New York is projected for Joe Biden. That's worth 29 electoral college votes. That's the same number of college votes that it looks Mr. Biden is not going to get in Florida. So that's going to go to Donald Trump. But he gets New York, which he was always going to do. Texas is another big state. It has more votes, electoral college votes, than New York or Florida. In fact, second only to California. At the moment, 64% of the vote is counting, and Mr. Biden is ahead. That doesn't mean to say he has necessarily won at all. A lot more to be counted. Well, that's not meant to happen in the Republican firmament. You're not meant to be that close. 1 percentage point. Arizona is another state the Republicans are worried about as well. It's too early to project. 11 electoral college votes are at stake there. Normally you would expect Arizona to stay Republican, and it may well, but it is in contention, Kevin.
Such an interesting picture of America in flux, isn't it? We are seeing the country change, and we're seeing it in these numbers that we're getting from these states around the country tonight. Let's have a quick look at where we are then on that electoral college quest for 270. Donald Trump, he's at 48. Joe Biden at 73. I think it's seesawed a little bit during the course of the evening. This again, please do not read into this too much because we have a long way to go. They have to get to 270 in order to get there. So we've had a whole bunch of these states closing, and we will get more of a sense. I'm still waiting for Florida to be pulled. That will be an interesting one.
Well, it will be an important point of the night, but perhaps not a definitive point. We'll have to wait for several hours to discover that. Anyway, you know a man who knows a lot about this. Oh, Christian Fraser. He's at the BBC Tapestry. It's the latest voting.
So many interesting races there. Even because I don't want to go first. 29 legislative votes coming in New York. For Joe Biden, that puts him in 73-48, of course, going to be close out in Texas, that's a close vote there. Just look at the turnout in Texas. Just to believe, I mean, we saw a huge early vote in Texas. The total electorate in Texas is now about 12.7 million people. That is quite an extraordinary statistic in this narrative, extraordinary numbers. Now, let's go to Florida, just have a quick look at the vote there. 94% of it counted. It's been very more and more towards Donald Trump. So that is why Larry Taylor said that in the Trump campaign they're feeling pretty positive about Florida now. We're starting to see it swing towards Donald Trump and away from Joe Biden. And I think very soon we're going to be able to put that in the record the way that things are going. I'm going to work my way up the East Coast. I'm going to show you some interesting patterns. I'm going to start first with, let's check in on Georgia, because although they've got a first order fight in Georgia in the Atlanta area, they are still counting votes. 31% of it counted so far. Healthy lead now for Donald Trump there. But remember this, and it is quite a significant thing to remember, that 78% of the vote was absentee ballot, and look, it skews heavily towards Joe Biden. But this is one of those examples that Kelly was telling you about, where you will see one candidate jump into the lead, depending on how and when they process that early ballot. It will take Georgia a couple of days to put all those early ballots through the machines, and so you might see this start to narrow very quickly, I would think, over the course of the next 2 months. Let's check in on North Carolina, because this one, I think, is really crucial tonight. Still too early to project. 3/4 of the vote counted. There is a difference of 3 there. When people register to vote in the states, they have to indicate whether they are Democrat, whether they're Republican, or whether they're independent. 36% of North Carolina said they were Democrats, 40% said they were Republican, 33% said they were independent. And they will decide this battle tonight. That has gone up as well, the turnout there, by 1.2 million. Joe Biden has a lead of 152,000 votes at the moment. So what? There's about just over 1 million votes. For sure 2 million votes actually still to count. So it's still early days in North Carolina, not too much. Let's go to, I'll show you Ohio very quickly, because they counted the early ballot first there. Half of the vote was counted. You can see the early ballot went towards the Democrats, but Joe Biden's already starting to narrow here. They're counting the in-person votes now, and Donald Trump doing a little bit better in Ohio. Pennsylvania. The Republicans were very pleased in Pennsylvania with their registration. And in 2016, Donald Trump amped up his votes in those rural counties where there were fewer voters. And when I look at Pennsylvania's turnout tonight, it's up 1 million. So maybe there are more Republicans coming out. But I've just looked at one stat from Pennsylvania very early in the count. There's a county called Lehigh, which is just north of Philadelphia. It's the only county that is 100% counted its vote, and Joe Biden's vote share there was at 31 points. Donald Trump down 26. The Democrats will be looking at that tonight, thinking we're with a really good shout in Pennsylvania. A look at the absentee ballot, not as big as in other states. They don't have a traditional early voting in Pennsylvania, but again, it's heavily towards Biden, so some good news there for the Democrats in Pennsylvania. Reset the map. Okay, let's just very quickly show you 2016, what might happen. I want to show you, to give you an idea of why we're focusing on these states. We put North Carolina in blue, we put Georgia in blue. We're going to talk about Arizona very quickly, because they count very quickly in Arizona. There's a big absentee ballot there. Look. In fact, when those two went blue, it would be short by 7. We don't even need to talk about the adjustment states.
So interesting. And of course, we also have to remember that different counts come in from different bits of the state. It might be that a whole load of ballots in a Trump area were counted, and then in one state it might be that a whole load of ballots in a Biden area was counted, which is again why we have to urge caution and patience, because it simply is going to take a while for us to get these results.
We need to know more than what's happening in these Rust Belt states around the Great Lakes and the solar focus in 2016. So let's go to 5 marriages in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 5.
Yeah, hi Andrew. Most folks were just over an hour ago or so we're still getting that much information coming out in terms of the counties that are reporting. Christian mentioned Lehigh County just north of here a few minutes ago, suggesting that the Democrats are pretty confident that their round game has matched the amount of mail-in ballots that have been coming in over the last week or so. The Republicans, however, they've been making it clear over the last few weeks that voter registration for their supporters is up. Big data using analysis of key areas target supporters, that has helped them as well. And their idea of their ground game is that it has been successful. They've got it out in order to match those mail-in ballots that many people believe will be in favour predominantly of the Democrats once those mail-in ballots are counted over the next 2 or 3 days. So results beginning to dribble in here, but it's going to take quite a while. We're hoping to get a little bit of progress on the mail-in ballots that were begun to started to be counted earlier on today. Some counties aren't doing that until tomorrow. But we may get a little bit of a progress report on the complexion of those votes that have been counted the last few hours. But yeah, it's going to take quite a while for the results to come out here. Another 3 days potentially before we get a final result in terms of simply the 2.4 billion or so mail-in ballots that have been sent in.
Thanks, Clive. We'll be back as the night goes on.
Okay, let's check in with Jeff Blake. He's a former Republican senator from Arizona. Senator Blake, thank you very much for joining us. We've been talking about Arizona during the course of this evening. It's early now, and the votes not even polls are not even closed. But are you hearing anything from the early vote returns in Arizona yet?
Okay, at least those. In fact, some are still waiting in line. I was just told that they'll be able to still vote as long as they're in line. The polls have just officially closed. So it'll be about an hour before we get those early ballot results. And then we'll know a lot about what Arizona's going to do.
Okay, while we wait for Arizona, let's talk about your position in the Republican Party. You were one of the few major critics of Donald Trump during the course of his presidency from the Republican side. You effectively paid for that criticism with your job as a senator in the U.S. Senate. If Donald Trump were to lose tonight, what happens to the Republican Party that he leaves behind?
That's an open question. As far as when will happen, how he goes or how he departs the scene will have a lot to do with that. But we have to change, and I have to tell you, I think most of my former colleagues, elected Republicans, will breathe a huge sigh of relief when the president exits. Because they know that there's no future with Trumpism. It's just, anger and resentment are not a governing philosophy. And there's just no way forward. So I think the Republican Party obviously needs to transition, and I think the results so far tonight bear that out.
You mean your former colleagues who are still in the U.S. Senate? You really hear them speak out against Donald Trump. You've hardly heard them speak out against Donald Trump over the last 4 years. Are they telling you things in private that are different from what they're saying in public?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, there's tremendous fear of the president and his control of the Republican base. This is the president's party now. But most of my former colleagues who have elected positions know that there's really no future there. It's a demographic cul-de-sac. And so when you see states today, as well,
Texas getting close. I don't think Texas can still be red, but it's getting closer. So we know as Republicans and elected Republicans, at least, we have to change.
It's kind of an extraordinary position, the one that you are laying out, the scenario that you are painting for us as a Republican former senator yourself. You are saying that there are a lot of elected Republicans sitting in the Senate right now who don't really want their sitting Republican president to win another term in office. Is that the situation that you're describing in America at the moment?
Yes, most definitely. One they aspire to do all of the...
Could they have done something about it by speaking out against it if they had spoken out?
Well, if the help of them, it would have, but we could never get enough to do it. And that may not have done it anyway. The president has a real hold on the base of the party. That won't last, and I think a big election loss really tends to focus the party. And I think that we'll see that tonight. And I hope that Republicans realize that there's no future. Try to drill down on the base even further. And that just doesn't get you anywhere. If you look at what the president has done to the party, the down ballot over the past 4 years, just in the midterm elections, we lost the House of Representatives. We'll likely lose the Senate tonight. We lost 350 legislative seats nationwide, 7 governorships. The Republican Party is being hollowed out, and will continue to be hollowed out if the president is reelected. And most of my Republican colleagues know that.
Senator, would you run for the presidency of the United States if someone can do this tonight?
I don't think that the party's going to switch that fast in the next couple of years to welcome one who is so critical to the president. But the party has to change, and somebody who views the Republican Party as more of a big tent party. After Romney lost in 2012, we conducted a so-called autopsy where we determined that the party had to appeal to a broader electorate. And then Donald Trump came along and kind of chased the populists. And you can win an election here or there on populist themes like that, but pretty soon you run out of aging white voters like me. So we've got to change.
Well, thank you. That's an aging white voter. Thank you for doing our program anyway. Senator Blake, thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
We are projecting Connecticut for Joe Biden, no surprise there, state close to New York, just to the east of Albany, second Republican coast. Used to be big in the hedge fund industry, but a lot of them moved Florida. Anyway, strongly there for the Democrats, as nearly every big state is. And in the other mirror image, a state that was always going to stay with Donald Trump, South Dakota, we are now projecting for Mr. Trump, the state he won easily again in 2016. One of these states with a small population, a lot of land, small population, only 3 electoral college votes because it hasn't got enough of a population to have a lot of people in the House. And then it's got 2 senators, so it's 3 electoral college votes in there. A state that is in contention, unlike South Dakota or Connecticut, is a surprise. It was a big surprise until 2020. Texas, 66% of the vote has now been counted in Texas. Joe Biden's on 49%. Donald Trump is on 49%. Therefore, we are unable to project who the winner is going to be. The significance at this stage is that it is a toss-up and in contention. This is not happened in previous presidential elections. We modern times. We mentioned who you have there.
Where did we talk about Texas at all?
At all. You could just tick it off into the Republican camp and then move on, as we used to do with Georgia as well. We were saying that is also in contention. No state is, other than California, is as big as Texas. But Georgia's a pretty big state. It's the 8th biggest state in the union in terms of population, young population. It's one of the fastest growing states in the union as well, along with Florida. Let's go to Mark Strassen. He's a CBS reporter. He's in Atlanta, Georgia. Mark, can you bring us up to date?
Hi, Andrew. This is an election return watch party here in Atlanta because of the coronavirus threat. All the folks who would normally be working inside are now sitting outside watching the returns come in. They are excited. They're mostly Democrats and excited because Georgia doesn't normally think of itself as a battleground state. It has been reliably Republican for a generation. No Democrat has won the state of Georgia since Bill Clinton in 1992. But as you mentioned, Andrew, this state is changing. It's growing younger, it's growing more diverse. And Democrats genuinely believe this could be the year that a Democrat wins, that Joe Biden can carry the state of Georgia. The early returns here were record-setting, as they have been in many states. Nearly 4 million Georgians already voted by the time polls opened this morning. So that when polls did open, there were no reports of crazy long lines. Wait times were 10 or 15 minutes, very reasonable. There were very, very minor problems. The issue now is counting the votes. There has been a problem. In downtown Atlanta, in the professional basketball arena, they were processing absentee ballots, absentee paper ballots, a water pipe burst. They had to put the counting on hold. When that counting will resume is an open question. By what report, it could happen tonight, but officially from the counting office, it may not happen for another day or two. So Georgia, a key battleground state, may not have its results known, Andrew, until possibly tomorrow or even later. They hope not, but it is a possibility. And depending on the rest of America goes, that could keep a fair number of Republicans and Democrats in a state of suspense.
It could indeed, because Georgia is an important state, and only 37% of the vote is being counted so far. And it isn't just an important state for the presidential elections. There are 2 Senate fights going on there, and the route to Democrat control of the Senate could also be through Georgia, and I assume that they're going to be delayed as well. If neither side, in neither battle, if neither of them gets 50%, then they're going to have a runoff, and we won't know the result of that till early January.
This is the only state, Georgia, that has both of its U.S. Senate seats on the ballot, both held by Republicans, both facing stiff challenges from Democratic candidates. In one of the races, there were 3 significant candidates, 2 Republican, 1 Democrat. That race is definitely going to go to a runoff in January. The other one is less clear, but as you mentioned, in the event of a close race, these absentee ballots could also affect the tabulation of the U.S. Senate seat races along with the presidential race. So a lot is riding on the downtown basketball arena and the folks inside manually processing these absentee ballots, getting back on track, getting ahead of this tabulation process. Because a lot of people obviously want to know what the results are, want to learn who their next U.S. president is, and also want to learn who the 2, at least one of the next senators is from the state of Georgia, who should possibly decide, as you mentioned, control of the U.S. Senate.
So, just to clarify, what we are waiting for now is all the ballots that were sent in early. That's where the delay and the hitch has been in terms of counting them. We've got all the day ballots counted by now, have we?
I don't know that all the ballots have been counted, Kenny. I don't know that that's true. What we're waiting for is the paper absentee ballots. They have tabulated about 86,000 of them. I've heard from one source they have another 50,000 ballots to go. It's a time-consuming process. When they are able to resume the processing and the tabulation of those ballots is unclear, but until they do, depending how close the rest of the Georgia returns are, we may not know who the winner of these races ends up being.
Mark, thank you for that. You're in an interesting place tonight in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for joining us here on the BBC.
Well, let's go now to, so I get some more graphics. We can have some more states that have just been called. We've got Colorado, which has been projected for Biden. That has 9 electoral college votes. Colorado used to be a swing state, used to be more conservative. It's one of those states that is becoming more reliably Democratic. We also call as well North Dakota. That is projected for Donald Trump with 3 electoral college votes. No surprise in that one. North Dakota, solidly Republican state. So 2 more states that we can have to
We're going to speak to the disinformation correspondent, but I know something you thought that would be, but it's not. In fact, the full title is Disinformation and Social Media Correspondent. She's Mariana Spring. She's in the BBC newsroom. Mariana, we know there's been a lot of disinformation around. Social media is full of it. Has it played a big role in this 2020 election campaign?
We've definitely seen a lot of conspiracy theories being shared online in the build-up to this election. That's everything from conspiracy theories suggesting Donald Trump didn't really have coronavirus, promoted by Democrat supporters, to this QAnon conspiracy theory. It's a baseless conspiracy that suggests President Trump is waging a secret war against satanic pedophiles, and in fact, the first person ever has been elected to Congress who supports that QAnon conspiracy theory. She's in Georgia and has just been elected. And then we've also seen a great deal of voting disinformation, falsehoods about whether postal voting will be fraudulent, and that's not just in the build-up to the election, but today we've seen all kinds of unsubstantiated rumours about fraud, about suggestions that people are being intimidated, communications, and that's something people should be really looking out for on their social media feeds. And in the hours to come, the concern is that allegations of voter fraud or suggestions that one camp might announce they've won on social media or something like that could happen, and that's what we and the social media sites have to keep an eye on.
Anything floating around tonight? I'm intrigued by the idea that Trump has actually been elected to the US Congress. I completely think the QAnon conspiracy. But any new conspiracies floating tonight that we can get to grips with, or signs of Russian or Chinese interference?
Actually, surprisingly not. Aside from voting disinformation, we haven't seen any new conspiracy theories emerge. But one thing that has become clear is there's a lot of the disinformation in the build-up to polling day has come from sources. It appears to...
Nobody's flipped anything yet. It looks like Trump's won Florida, which wasn't unexpected.
Seems to have corrupted or capsized.
He's catching up in Texas.
Online, so we can expect
it all depends on
this election. We might
North Carolina, really,
where people in Russia
at the moment.
or in China spreading voting disinformation and amplifying on social media. But right now,
Mariana, today the FBI and the New York Attorney General announced that they are investigating a spate of robo-calls around the country.
400 metres left, and then we're down to 5K. So
it wasn't safe.
We're gonna.
What have you heard about that?
The next 4 minutes. 400 metres.
It's a really important point, and actually, obviously, voters who don't use social media with this information. There were reports across the US of people receiving calls that said, stay home, stay safe, don't go out and vote, you can vote tomorrow, all of which are unhelpful and untrue, and a lot of officials are very concerned about the impact that could have. It's really unclear where that's come from, and actually there were reports of similar calls in other countries in the build-up to this, so it's really unclear who's doing this. It could be foreign actors, it could be domestic, and it's happened at a very late hour, so it makes you question, why would you do this, and has it really had an impact? But it has been widespread nonetheless.
Thanks, Mariana.
Okay, let's check.
No problem to you, I'll have a new one.
Our correspondent Larry McGill is in Charlotte for us. Larry, what's happening in North Carolina? Are we going to get results there anytime soon?
It is really hard to tell. People are on a nice edge here because this could go anyway. And so tight to that the Attorney General of North Carolina today sent out a tweet warning North Carolinians to be wary of any calls telling them some of those disinformation calls were happening here. Some robocalls were essentially telling voters not to vote today, that they can vote tomorrow because of long lines, which is completely fake. And the Attorney General essentially told North Carolinians, please ignore it, this is your last chance to vote. Right now, we only have just votes of votes in North Carolina. Just over half of the votes have been counted. It is too early to call. However, two interesting things to point out. The New York Times saying there's a 73% chance of President Trump winning North Carolina again. However, Fox News, the president's favorite channel, is saying that actually Fox News is saying that there's a 92% chance of Joe Biden winning North Carolina, which is confusing a whole lot of people here. We're a social distance to watch party out here. People, they don't want to predict, right? Because it's hard to tell, and they're hoping that they'll get a result soon. But let me ask somebody who's been out there campaigning, talking to people. Gina Navarrete is with me, co-chair of the Women's March here in Charlotte. How do you feel about these two different numbers? Fox News saying says Joe Biden will win here. The New York Times says likely President Trump will win again.
You know, I mean, the numbers are so different, but it's hard to predict. And so I'm cautiously optimistic, and I will try to go with the Fox News numbers.
Why are you out there promoting the Biden-Harris tickets?
Why was I out there?
Yes.
Because we never predicted that Donald Trump was going to win 4 years ago. Yeah, we've seen, one bad decision after the other, one terrible policy after the other, and I feel that we have to get on with that. Here in Ecuador County, the Democrats run around the clock just trying to get the vote out, trying to get everybody to vote, because every vote counts. We try to get Latino vote out, the African American vote out, and it's just so important that we've been going down the course in this country of we need to be adapted.
You told me that you were an immigrant to the United States and you were not a citizen. You had a chance, but you chose not to. But then President Trump got elected, and that changed your mind. What happened?
Well, at that point in 2016, when I saw Donald Trump win, I just thought I can't sit out elections anymore. So I had always been very involved in politics and getting out the vote, and I felt that I needed to pass the vote. So I quickly became a citizen, and when this was my first presidential election, actually, that I've been able to vote.
How will you feel if President Trump wins again?
I will be devastated. I really will. Because I feel that if Biden wins, we have a lot of work to do to take back our country, to kind of correct some of the bad policies that we put in place with President Trump.
We have 5K left.
So I think if Trump wins again, this is just going back down the wrong course.
What does it say to you that it's so close right now? It's impossible to tell who will win North Carolina.
It's very disturbing to me. It's very disturbing because I feel that this is one of the worst presidents we have. He has trampled over the Constitution. There's been so many wrong things in the presidency. So for me to see that it's very close is really concerning.
All right, thank you very much. We have a guest who joined us over there. There's a little dog there. So everybody's waiting for that result. Even that dog. Back to you.
Larry, thank you very much. It is passions are so intense.
I was just trying to
both sides.
I believe that didn't they start straight away as well with the mail-in votes?
Alabama, we can. This is Washington DC as much as you want to. Alabama, we can call it for President Trump. 9 electoral college votes. No surprise there. One interesting thing about Alabama, it is the one Senate seat that the Democrats think that they might lose. Doug Jones is the Democratic Senator for Alabama. He could lose his seat tonight. And we can actually bring you one Senate race. That is out in Colorado, where the sitting Senator Cory Gardner has lost, projected to have lost to Mr. Hickenlooper, who was the challenger, who is the Democrat. So that would be one take. It would be actually, if we got it, it would be our first switch of the night at that level in the Senate. So it was a seat, by the way. That Senate seat was expected to fall. Cory Gardner was expected to lose it.
One of the seats the had to take the control of the Senate. North Carolina is really close. 80% of the vote counted is divided 1 percentage point ahead, 50 to 49. Florida, Mr. Trump's on 51 to 48. 95% of the vote counting, which means he's over 330,000 votes ahead, which is getting only 5% of the votes in the counting mathematically possible.
That's a huge mountain. I don't see how Biden overcomes that.
So the evening is just getting interesting now. All sorts of things are now coming into play. The Senate is kind of talking about there. North Carolina, Florida, Texas is still counting. Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump are 49-49 with 73% of the vote counting. States that have not been in contention for a generation or even 2 generations. And now we've got a lot going, so that I
just before we're going to go to the news in a minute, but before we do, South Carolina, sister state to the north, we are projecting that for Donald Trump. 29% of the vote counted. He wasn't pretty comfortable last time.
And I think we get to the news, which will tell us everything just in a short recap.
Another matter we shall see. Let's go now for the latest news with Tina Tahini.
Polls in the US presidential election are now closed in most central and east coast states. Now the votes are counted. Projected results suggest President Trump has held traditional Republican states like Indiana and Kentucky, with Democratic challenge of Joe Biden as influence to hold states like New York and New Jersey.
Oh,
now the key battleground.
I don't understand any of this. I understand the voting. I just don't understand. Oh.
Sunshine State.
These are morons. Yeah, it is always. It's, you know, it's always down to less than a few 100,000. But they've answered the question I had tonight, which was why all the Florida Latin vote goes Republican. It's because they've all come from Cuba and socialist countries, and they've been brainwashed that Democrat equals socialist. Nobody get away from that. Which I understand a little bit more now. That's what's continuously confusing me recently.
And that's the divisive politics that covers the president for his handling of the pandemic. Donald Trump is fighting for a second term in the White House and has been telling his supporters for weeks that he can hold on to states he won 4 years ago and win the majority through electoral college. And he's a man who doesn't like to lose. Winning is easy. Losing is never easy.
So I reckon I'll be still. I've got a set of results to close in half an hour. But hopefully I'll be finished before the set after that.
This election was unprecedented. Turnout for easy records, and in North Carolina, voters poured into polling stations today. While the world waits to see how this election unfolds, is high. And in the two campaigns on America's streets, a sense of how much both sides.
Well, I mean, the elderly vote is obviously massively Republican. So now what they were saying earlier on was the fact that the majority of the Latino vote in Florida were Republican.
Americans are also casting ballots for seats in the US Congress and are choosing new governors in 11 states. And a third of seats are up for grabs in the Senate. Opinion polls suggest the Democrats have a chance of capturing the upper house after 6 years of a Republican majority. If they do, the Trump Biden.
I've never heard of the term snowbird. I will have to look at that a bit more. That's quite interesting.
And House of Representatives is expected to stay under Democratic control. The Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has won re-election for a 7th term in Kentucky. His party is defending hotly contested races in 12 states, while the Democrats defending just 2. He spoke at a news conference after the result was announced.
Tonight, we're not finished yet. Everyone is more of the politics that think about the economy and competition and socialism, life of prosperity, and her work. We want to continue rebuilding our military and leading around the world. Not to cut bad deals, but just hope our adversaries will work. We want to keep treating China like the threat it is.
What a horrible man.
America's flags is the sacrifice. We're going to keep standing up for the unborn. Not forever doing at least social cultural instead of the most vulnerable lives in this country.
In other news, the government of Austria has confirmed the attack in Vienna was carried out by just one gunman. He's been identified as a 20-year-old Serbian migrant with dual nationality who previously been jailed for joining a jihadist group in Syria.
Real quite late, Sheila, is this Christmas lights are going well. We started to slot some of them up, and did a bit of a downer this week really, because one of my friends who does them, he did a Halloween show display. And the first day had a few people, the second day had a few people, and the third day, like a couple of hundred people came out and saw the show. And he raised a lot of money for charity. But the day after that, he got a knock at the door, and the police were there and handed him a letter, which was a warning saying that if he did that again, he'd have a £10,000 fine. So just taking the wind out of it a little bit, so I have to reassess what I'm going to do with my lights. And it's tough because, you know, everything that's been cancelled this year, I've always gone, I can still work on the lights, I can still do something this year. So to lose that as well, I was weird, but that has hit me a bit hard.
It's 9:30 here, just past 9:30 here on the east coast of the United States. We are waiting for the results in several big states. We are looking at Florida with an eagle eye as those percentages tick up, but it looks very good for it's very hard to see, Andrew, how Joe Biden overcomes.
What about you?
He has some 300,000
How does Sheila
in Florida with 95% now of the votes counted, but we are still waiting for a lot of big states.
We are, and let us just remind ourselves that Mr. Trump had to win Florida in any state of the White House, whereas Mr. Biden can still have won the White House.
I'll still be putting them up, but I just don't think I'll be doing any music already synchronised. I still have them up. I mean, we put the tree up the other day, and the tree looks fantastic.
The interesting part of the night, let's just check in on Florida, shall we? And I'll show you the vote share. As Kelly said, Joe Biden now trailing quite heavily Donald Trump in Florida with 329,000 votes behind. 5% again, about 500,000 votes still to count, so he needs around 70% of those final votes. They're going to be very close to full Florida, I think, because that doesn't look very likely. Let's check in on North Carolina. This one's really interesting over the next couple of hours. 81% of the vote counted so far. The absentee ballot, which skewed heavily towards the Democrats, that went at the beginning of the night, so they are counting in-person ballots. So Donald Trump very much in the game in North Carolina. He's doing what he needs to do in the South to resolve against North Carolina. Let's have a look at the map again.
We might even decorate, we haven't done that yet in the house. About the Scarlet Room.
Remember that the early ballot in Michigan, that only was being processed this morning. I told you a little bit earlier, it takes quite a while to process those ballots. You've got to open the envelopes, check the signatures against what you have on file. There have to be 2 people there to check it, so that's going to take a couple of days. And at the moment, what you see, and this is a really good example,
did you get to go back to work
today?
Or were you back at work and now about to be further on again?
Ballot. You'll see there, it skews very heavily towards the Democrats. So what you will see, again, we've seen it in other states already tonight, is that you will see that narrowing as the count goes forward. Let's have a look at Wisconsin, very early in the day in Wisconsin. Here we are, 11% of the vote counted. Joe Biden in front. Let's have a look at that absentee vote, which I haven't seen yet. Yeah, that skews again
onto the bench. Does that mean you're waiting for some more work to come in?
Similar picture that we see across those states tonight. So let's just consider, let's put back to 2016. So tonight, that Donald Trump had to get into the game by winning Florida. He's winning in Florida. He's winning at the moment in Georgia, although there is a big early ballot still to count there, and so that's very much in the balance. North Carolina is in the balance. If we were to take the blue diamond mark, Wisconsin and Michigan, which polled heavily for Biden before Election Day, and we looked at those early ballots, and that skewed heavily towards Biden. Pennsylvania, we said it right at the beginning of the night. Pennsylvania is the one that Donald Trump really needs. He can afford to lose Arizona. But he definitely needs Pennsylvania, and then, well, let's not talk about that just yet, because that's too...
No, Christian, it's a tie. You've done it.
Yeah, no, please, we are not talking about the tie.
Look what he's done. We're talking about the tie.
Because whoever came up with this ridiculous system and then let us end up with a tie, for goodness sake, because they're just... we're never going to end up with a tie.
You know what, though? You know what? Before we talk about that, we can come back to that if you want this evening. That Nebraska 2, the second district. There's one electoral college vote in Nebraska 2. Do you remember last week, Donald Trump went up to Omaha and everybody said, what is he doing out in Omaha campaigning for one electoral college vote? That's why he was in Omaha. That's why he was in Omaha. It's crucial that he ultimately start with the congressional district in Nebraska. He will avoid that 269.
Okay.
That's just one scenario. It's very early in the days. That's just one scenario. I just want to show you how fun the electoral college can be.
Yeah. One of the Christian things in electoral college is fun.
He's got a new toy, actually. He's Christian a new toy, and he'll have a great. You have no idea.
Jeremy Rand that used to do that bit with the balls.
Look, it's the tie scenario, and it's kind of fun for American politics groups, and we can talk about it a little bit more later. Can I just ask quickly, though, Christian, can you kind of whiz back up again with your board? I just want to ask you about Ohio, because that's another one. We're looking at 63% counted. Biden 50, Trump 49. I'm wondering if Ohio might be the kind of flip of what we're seeing down in Florida. I mean, Ohio is a state that's trending red. It's becoming older. It's got not very many people in it who have college degrees comparative to other countries. It's very white comparative to other states. I mean, and yet...
How much immediacy?
What's happening in Ohio?
Well, don't forget that went into the cannon machine first. So, I just showed you a state where Michigan wasn't, where Donald Trump was ahead because that early ballot is not just counted. That went.
Which one are you watching?
That's why you see Biden in front of the vote. Now they're counting the in-person ballot. But you're right, this was right in the sweet spot for Donald Trump. It's 75% wide, it's older than the national average. Nowhere did Make America Great Again resonate louder than in the Rust Belt state of Ohio. The Democrats, though, thought they were in the shot with Ohio. Remember that Joe Biden went to Cleveland just the other day, dropped in there, which was a bit of a surprise visit. Look, like Merrick, Donald Trump won Ohio by 8 points in COVID-16. I'm looking at the swing right now. I don't think there's enough swing in those counties that have completed their count so far for Biden to take it. It's certainly close, but I think it's only 63% of the vote counted. And listening to Republicans now, they feel pretty good about Ohio. Remember, it is slightly more Republican these days. We've got a Republican governor's mansion, a Republican legislature, and took it by 8 points.
Ah, right, okay. Oh, thanks.
16. I don't think
I can't check Twitter at the moment. I've been banned. It's been really weird not being on Twitter all day.
Well, Christian mentioned Michigan there. It is a crucial state.
You should probably get back to sleep.
One of the Great Lakes states.
I'm going to get right 3 hours.
Trump took in 2016. He beat them out in his time. Brenda Lawrence is the Democratic representative from Detroit in Michigan. Welcome, Congresswoman. It looks like your party has lost Florida. Are you going to do better in Michigan?
Well, this is a very serious time for us in the United States, especially for me being a person of color, being a woman, and the policies that we have lived through for years. This is not a recent act for us. While politics is interesting, my party is the Democratic Party. I'm more concerned about the direction of our country. America is known for being a country of inclusion, a country that promotes the values and inclusiveness of race, religion, and so many people flock to America because of that. I can tell you historically, we have seen our country fight through civil rights, through women's rights, through gay rights, and we have historically come to the right place. And I can tell you tonight is not an easy night for me because I'm seeing a country that is very divided. We have always been a country that promotes democracy, and watching democracy play out.
Looks like we've got some trouble with the connection.
I can understand that.
Have we got you back, Congresswoman?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for that. You seem almost upset, Congresswoman. Are you upset because you think there's a serious prospect that Mr. Trump will be re-elected?
I would say that another 4 years of this administration would be extremely hard, not for us just in the United States, but around the country. I don't know if world leaders like to be insulted. I don't know if world leaders like when America formed alliances and we work together, and to now have America pull out of all of those relationships.
But do you fear it's a prospect? My question was, do you fear it's a prospect?
Certainly. I know that the Democratic Party has worked hard. It's early. I know in Michigan we have had an amazing amount of energy that has been shown to be supportive of new leadership. So it's early. So I'm not concerned. I'm just really committed to this process.
We've seen earlier reports of a substantial black turnout in Wayne County, Detroit, where you are, and also in the county around Flint. Can you confirm that?
Yes, it's been record turnout, and we know that my district is majority African American. It has one of the largest Hispanic, Jewish, and Arab American populations. So my district is very diverse, and we have that one county. So the majority of the population is in the southeastern part of the state, and we're waiting for those numbers to come out.
But my original question to you was, given that you talk has lost Florida, are you more hopeful that you will win back Michigan?
Yes, I am.
I understand you used to work for the Postal Service for many, many years, and it's had a real challenge this time. I saw that there were 4.5 billion pieces of electoral material through the post. I fear we may have lost you again, the line's not too great. We got you back. How has the Postal Service, with this huge rise in mail-in votes, how does it cope where you are?
We have partnered with the Postal Service. I know the operations and have connected with the Postmaster of Detroit and of this region to ensure that we sweep, that we go through the postal facilities to make sure there's no ballots laying around. As you know, there's a number of lawsuits that would allow a ballot to be counted if it was postmarked by today, even if it wasn't in the hands of the courts. So we are, there will be some glitches. Nothing is perfect, but I do have confidence in the Postal Service.
Thank you for joining us tonight on this election night of 2020.
Congresswoman is right. The night is young and the numbers are still coming in, but there are some people who are already feeling agitated. Let's go to the street outside the White House. Our correspondent Lima Bull is in what is now called Black Lives Matter Plaza, right outside the White House. It's beginning the scene of Q.
Oh, what's the BBC? Well, we switched over to part 2. Okay. Catty K, what a name, Catty K.
They were chasing one man who apparently had tried to assault one of the actresses into the ground, and then started a very familiar kind of confrontation, a huge dividing line through American society, all a big dividing line for this election as well, of course.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Jim.
Of law, order as well, and now it is outside the White House after having been something of a festive atmosphere, as I say, earlier in the evening.
Keep an eye on that for us. We're going to come back to you. The line is a little glitchy. I'm sure it's because there are a lot of people trying to get signals from that area of town. It's right outside the White House, of course. A lot of television cameras and a lot of people are trying to get signals. We're all vying for this Zoom capability at the moment. Let's go.
hear now from the Trump campaign. Nita Mosbacher is Women for Trump campaigner. She's based in Austin, Texas. Nika, it's great to have you on the program. I know that you've been working ever since the president was elected to get the president re-elected. Now here we are on election night. I imagine that you're looking at Florida and feeling good about Florida, but of course that was one the president had to hold in order to have a place at the White House. It's still going to do a lot more, and there are a lot more states coming in that look tighter and potentially going Joe Biden's way. How are you feeling about the state of play?
Well, I feel that the wind is at our back, certainly in southern states. I said before in 2016, and I'll say it again, losing Florida or Texas to Democrats is as tough as putting socks on a rooster. And I'll tell you why. I was co-chair of Women for McCain. And one of the reasons that we felt that we had lost in 2008 was the failure to reach out to Hispanics, Latinos, and racial groups. Working class Americans who own small businesses and were entrepreneurial who needed a second chance with the economy. And the campaign is really concentrated on its Latino outreach, which is why I think that we're doing well in Florida, should do well in Arizona. Individuals like women voters are really important to us. They were important in 2016, and they broke for Donald Trump, even though Hillary won the popular vote. It's because women are not single-issue voters. They're concerned right now not about getting sick from COVID. They're concerned about the collateral damage economically to their small businesses. And when I was on Women for Trump bus tours, that's what the story I heard over and over and over, is that Trump built a robust economy. We really think he can do it again. We have record unemployment among blacks and Hispanics. And I think that these individuals are now breaking for Trump. We've had many walk away from the Democratic Party. It's going to be race within. It was race within Wisconsin and Michigan, which was a surprise to the Democrats that they lost in 2016. I don't want to count my chickens, as we would say in Texas, before they hatch. But things are looking really good for us right now.
Upstairs, I tried to put socks on the rooster, but I can only imagine how difficult that is. But look, I'm looking, Nika, at Texas at the moment. 76% of the voters being counted. Donald Trump is at 50%, Joe Biden at 48%. I mean, it's close to in Texas. Once Texas goes, Nika, whether it's in 2020 or whether it's in 2024 or 2028, it's going to be almost impossible, isn't it, for a Republican to win the White House again?
Well, the last time a Democrat won Texas was Jimmy Carter back in, I think it's 1976. Obviously, the expansive Senate race and the close Senate race between Beto O'Rourke out of El Paso and my Senator Ted Cruz was somewhat of a harbinger of what was going to happen in the suburbs. I'm not really surprised that the suburbs like Harris County, Houston, Tarrant County, Dallas, Travis County, Mike County, and Austin, I'm not surprised that they broke for Biden. But we're a very large state, and we have conservative, rural, working class voters that are sticking with Trump. The margins are thinning. I think we won by 9 points in 2016. I project maybe 3 to 4% this particular election cycle. So we've got some work to do in Texas. Our demographics are shifting, but also the fact is that I believe it will see a record number of Hispanics and Latinos get out to vote. And they traditionally often stay home. So I think that could be good news, especially, it's always about the economy. I said it before in 2016, I'll say it again. It comes down to the economy. Look at our 33% GDP growth this last week. The fact that unemployment figures again are rising. We're now 8.0%. That's good news. We're on the right path. I think that Trump has been promises made, promises kept. He's an unorthodox candidate and an unorthodox constitutional president. Absolutely. Which promises? If you don't like his style, I think you'll vote for values which are smaller government, fewer regulations, and the fact that we have now 2 conservative Supreme Court justices, and I think that'll appeal to women as well as other voters.
Okay, I'm almost back over down in Texas for us, the state that Mitt Romney won in 2012 by
16 percentage points. Trump won it by 9 percentage points. We heard it there from the Mosbacher. It could be won this time around by only about 2 percentage points. That is the trend in Texas. It is moving. It might not be tight, but it's moving in Texas.
Well, let's take it a little bit further west now to the southwest, to be exact. And that trend has also been underway in Arizona, a traditionally staunch Republican state, but it's been moving more Democrat over the years. They picked up a Senate seat for Democrats quite recently, and it's dominated by Maricopa County. That was the biggest urban county, almost 5 million people live there. It's a greater Phoenix area. It was the biggest county that Mr. Trump won anywhere in the nation in 2016. It's now in contention. Sophie Long is there. She joins us now. Sophie.
Thank you very much. Yes, we join the Republican Watch Party from Arizona, where people are getting ready to celebrate. Now, whether they get to do that and champagne corks will be popping, or whether they'll be drowning their sorrows, really remains to be seen. This will be a very tight race. Now, officially closed here. They did almost an hour ago. So we're told that there are still hundreds of people in line. And if they were in line before 7 p.m., local weather closed, their votes will still count. Nonetheless, Maricopa County, so we should start getting some results at 8 p.m., going a few minutes away. I'm joined here at this watch party by Ken and Janet. Thank you very much. So I'm going to try and talk to you despite my mask and despite the noise.
No mask.
And tonight.
Well, I sure hope so. It feels like we're going to. But you just never know. Always.
Now, this has been a very different election for you, hasn't it? Because this is now a battleground state. It was always reliably Republican. Why do you think that is? Is that Trump effect?
You know, I think it was, the demographics here have changed over the years. And we're a lot of out-of-state folks who moved into Arizona because they like what the state has to offer. So with that, obviously the demographics have changed. So in this way, it's become a battleground state where before it's just someone's red, and now we don't know. So we're hoping that
There has been a huge amount of energy happened there. There have been TV ads coming at you, radio ads, online. Do you like being a battleground state? I mean, your vote really counts here now, right?
Yeah, I do. I like it better when we're more comfortable. You know, it's fight so hard, but we're still hopeful we can maintain the red.
And you know, it's been different with the energy, something we've never experienced before. We're not a political people, and there has been so many just grassroots types of events that has started up from flag waving at street corners to getting in our cars and our trucks and joining others with flags.
I'm not on the battery,
It is 10 o'clock here on the east coast of the United States, and we have several states now which are closing their polling stations, and hopefully will be bringing us the results soon. A couple of them are very interesting to watch. Let's run through them. There is Nevada, there is Iowa, there is Utah, and there is Montana. The two that we're going to be keeping an eye on during the course of the next hour or so are Nevada and Iowa. Iowa went for Donald Trump in 2016. Nevada, that went for Hillary Clinton. Nevada is too close to call. Iowa also too early to project at the moment. Utah, which is a solidly Republican state, too early to project, but I would be amazed if Utah were so Utah usually solidly Republican. We can assume that those 6 electoral college votes will stay in President Trump's hands.
I think that would be a reasonable assumption, not controversial. To assume Utah stays Republican. Let's look at where we are now with the electoral college as these votes come in. Joe Biden has 89, Donald Trump has 72. There's a lot more numbers to add to that before either of them can get to 270. That is the winning line. Let's go back to Christian Fraser at the BBC's Touchboard.
Yes, and that's how that translates on the map. If I was to look at that at any other time, I would say that's exactly how it should look. Those are solid red and blue states. Joe Biden 89 to Donald Trump's 72. I want to rattle through a number of states, just show you the state of play at the moment. Let's start in Florida. It's almost ready to be pulled in Florida. 382,000 vote lead Donald Trump has there, with just 4% of the votes to count. David Spratt, we did do that in the next hour or so. Let's have a look at North Carolina. I've been watching this through the course of the night. In fact, I'm going to show it you through our compares. I'm going to show you something in a second. But North Carolina, 86% of the vote counted. You can see it's narrowing all the time. The early ballot went into the vote machine when the polls closed. Now they're counting in-person ballots. It was 100,000 lead about an hour ago, then it was 80, and it was 60 now, just over 20,000 vote lead that Joe Biden has. It's on a knife edge in North Carolina. What I want to show you is swing. Now, swing is when you have completed counties. When counties have been completed, then you can compare what happened in 2020 compared to 2016. That swing is not enough for the Democrats to take North Carolina. 0.5, moving towards Democrats, but it's not enough to give Joe Biden North Carolina. Similarly, in Georgia, there is, you see here in Georgia, there is quite a big lead for Donald Trump at the moment, but remember, the mail-in ballot will be counted over the next 2 days. But just looking at the swing, early days in Georgia, but that swing, not enough to give Donald Trump. There you go. That swing, not enough to give Joe Biden Georgia. Right, let's have a look at a couple of others. Texas, they're about 70-odd% through Texas, through this county at the moment, 77%. Donald Trump just looking at a further lead here. He has 221,000 vote lead in Texas at the moment. The extraordinary figure from Texas this evening, I told you a little bit earlier, is the turnout. 11.5 million people. That's up 2.7 million on the vote in 2016. To show you the absentee ballot, because that is being fed in through the night, and that does swing towards Joe Biden. So it's still close in Texas, but things looking okay there. So, just quickly look back at 2016. So tonight, Donald Trump is going to get back to the White House. He's still in Florida. He needs to hold these southern states. Georgia, North Carolina, looking okay for him at the moment. It's narrowing in North Carolina. Texas not great, but it's in the red column for now. So we're starting to look, as we were saying at the early part of the evening, at these Rust Belt states up here in the Midwest. What it probably means for us tonight is we might not get a result. Because Arizona on its own, if it turns blue for Joe Biden, won't be enough without a couple of these states in the Midwest. So Pennsylvania will become crucial. They're only in the early part of the count. 21% of the vote counted. Donald Trump has a 5-point lead. Let me show you the absentee ballot. 40%. They don't have a tradition of early voting in Pennsylvania, but it's used heavily for Joe Biden, as does the early ballot, incidentally, in Michigan and Wisconsin as well. So there's reason for hope for Democrats up there in the Northwest and the Midwest, but in some of that area, I think there's a lot of optimism for the Republicans.
Yes, and they have to go back to that traditional blue rule that the Democrats lost to Donald Trump in 2016. That may be the way that Joe Biden gets back into the White House. By the way, on Wisconsin, I mean, they're not going to be going to count as absentee ballots in the area of Milwaukee, a heavily African-American area, until 6 a.m. tomorrow. So that may be another one that we don't get. Room here, I'm starting to see room for lots of litigation. We were reminded going into this that we had to be patient, and we're going to need that patience, and both sides, ideally, are going to need that patience, but whether they have it, Andrew, is a different question.
So the night could still break for Joe Biden. If it does so, as Christian was saying, it will be around these Great Lakes Rust Belt states that Mr. Trump won in 2016 and that Joe Biden needs to take back on if he doesn't to get the White House. So that can still happen. But so far, this night is not going the way the opinion polls has told us. Again, as it did in 2016, it didn't go the way it told us. It's much
tighter. The caveat would be we don't yet have those absentee ballots counted from those Rust Belt states. And as we have always said, those ballots are just as valid as the ballots on the day. They're just as important as the ballots that are cast today. So we have to wait and see them until those are counted.
But it does seem, nevertheless, to be a lot tighter than the polls indicate.
Certainly.
And that therefore leaves us with not yet knowing how this is going to end, particularly because, as Kevin was saying there, a lot of the results, a lot of the counting isn't going to even happen tonight.
and there's going to be more for the rest of the week. We're joined now by Mick Mulvaney, who's the former Trump chief of staff, and he's in South Carolina. Thank you for joining us. Are you beginning to think you might be able to win this now?
Yeah, actually. I think Florida, Andrew, is extraordinarily interesting. The last time I checked, I stepped away from the TV here, but the last time I checked, the president was up by about 3% in Florida. Keep in mind, Florida is a state that's counting its absentee ballots right away. That point is well made on many of the West Coast states, but Florida's absentee ballots will be in tonight. The president's up by about 3 points there without the western panhandle of the state, which is in a different time zone. Reporting it's a heavily Republican area. So even if the president just holds on to that 3 percentage point lead right now, that's someplace between 4 and 10 points of overperformance versus the polling average. He was expected by many pollsters to lose Florida by 26 or 7 points. If that's a bellwether state, then it bodes extraordinarily well for the president. If not, then it's a one-off and we can't use it for anything. But it's interesting now to look towards North Carolina and Georgia, because if Florida is a bellwether, the next place you'll see it sort of filter through would be North Carolina and Georgia. I understand that the president is very close to pulling even, if not ahead of North Carolina in just the last 20 minutes or so, and trending well in Georgia as well. North Carolina, however, will not finish counting its votes for as many as 9 days after tonight, so it could be very interesting to watch that. But Florida continued to get a lot of attention here, and rightly so.
But how concerned are you that Florida is not a bellwether state? Excuse me, the reason Mr. Trump did well, looks like he did better than he did in 2016, is because of the peculiar characteristics of the Hispanic vote in Florida. It's not Mexican American, it is more varied. A lot of them have come from socialist countries, communist countries. They're more inclined to the Republicans. None of that pertains to the Rust Belt. None of it pertains to Michigan or Ohio or even Pennsylvania, where the early signs there are not so good for them.
That's a fair point. That's why I say look next to North Carolina and Georgia, because if it was the impact of the Hispanics, the Hispanic community, especially in South Florida, you're right, that wouldn't necessarily translate. But if it's, for example, overperformance by the president against the African American community, that would translate in North Carolina and Georgia. So you sort of watch the dominoes as they fall. Keeping in mind, and everybody's mentioned this tonight, and I agree with it, we're going to wait to see how all of these things shake out over the course of the next couple of days, and there will be at least that long for many of these states. But you're looking for trends, you're looking for evidence, you're looking for some sort of sign, a canary in the coal mine, and Florida is one, it's North Carolina and Georgia next.
Given how close so far in the night the contest is, and as you've just said, it could take the next day, the next 2 days, before we get a much clearer picture. Would you accept it would never be wrong to claim victory on the basis of results we'll get tonight?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of chatter about that. I think everybody sort of acknowledges privately that it doesn't make any difference. A concession doesn't matter. The declaration of victory doesn't matter. It's the vote of the Electoral College in January that actually counts. I think the president has said he wouldn't do it preliminarily. I think many of the Democrats have encouraged Joe Biden not to concede if it comes to that. Again, I think that's one of the things the media talks about more than the candidates do. I don't think it's relevant to the outcome, certainly. And we'll probably end up being much ado about that.
But if the president was to appear from the White House in the next hour or so and say, look, folks, I've won, that would be wrong, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but it's not going to happen though, Andy. I mean, he's not going to show up in the next hour and say that. That would be foolish for him to do, because he could end up with this egg on his face. The president doesn't want that by any stretch of the imagination. Look, I recognize the fact that the media, especially overseas, makes an absolute caricature. He's actually much more typical of American politicians than I think folks realize overseas. A lot of what you're seeing tonight is ordinary person business. A lot of talk, for example, about the number of lawyers. That happens in every single race. That is not unusual for us. Parties wondering about whether or not late votes are going to be counted. That happens in every single race. The first race I ran for took 12 days after the election sort of won. This happens all the time here. This is really more close to ordinary course of business than I think people realize.
Marina is close to ordinary course of business, and we often don't know the result on election night. But there is a reason that people are concerned that this could be entering, if we don't have a result of this election until, say, Friday, which is possible with the Rust Belt state counting rate, there's a reason that people are concerned about violence in the country. There is a reason that people are concerned that the president may say all of those votes that came in on election day or that were posted, they are actually fake ballots and they should be contested. It's not abnormal. The kind of language we've heard from the president about this is not the kind of language we hear from the president.
Yeah, you follow American politics as closely as anybody. Let me ask you this question. Do you think there's more likelihood of violence if the president wins or loses?
I think the likelihood might come if there are 3 days in which there is no president declared and there are lots of lawsuits launched, and it looks like the president is trying to say that absentee ballots should not be counted. For example, in Pennsylvania, where they are allowed to carry on counting for 3 days after the election day if they arrive.
There's a reason you're seeing the large cities poured up tonight. They're heavily Democrat areas. They're worried about a backlash to the president. They're not about a backlash from the president's supporters if he loses. So, again, look, I know there's a lot of discussion in the media about civil unrest. I just don't see it happening tonight. Again, I think we will trend it back towards the leader. Is this an unusual election? Yes. Is it the most important election in our lifetime? Yes, but we always say that. The last time we said that was 4 years ago. So I get it. I understand that this president has a different style.
Just to be clear, if there isn't a result until Friday, you think the president would be happy to say there isn't a result yet, we will wait until Friday until all the ballots have been counted?
It depends. If he doesn't meet Pennsylvania, why would he wait? If you win Ohio and Minnesota and Arizona and Nevada and Florida, Pennsylvania will be meaningless. It won't make any difference.
Right, now I'm assuming that the Electoral College has not been called yet. So we're probably waiting for those ballots because they're typically.
I think the point is well is that if it all comes down to Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania is not counted yet, I think you're going to see both campaigns do exactly what they would do in the circumstances, which is send in armies of lawyers to make sure that things get counted appropriately. We've done this before. 2000, the election of 2000 was almost a mirror image of that, if that's the way it shakes out this year. So again, it's not always pretty, it's not always quick. It can be ugly in terms of the way we get to the results of elections, but we always get there, and the country soldiers on, which is what I absolutely expect to have here one way or the other in the next couple of days.
Mr. McInerney, it looks like Mr. Trump is going to hold on to North Carolina, which he won last time, and he's going to win again this time. I'm slightly surprised that you claim that this is all business as usual. I mean, I know American politics is always lawyered up for whatever you do, but the extent of lawyering up this time is huge. And normally we do know the result on the night of very soon after. The year 2000 only involved Florida. This time it could involve 3, 4, 5 states. And that is not business as usual, I would suggest. Indeed, that hasn't happened since 1876.
Andrew, what's your basis for saying there's more lawyers involved in this election than there are in previous elections?
Because both the Republicans and the Democrats have been proud, they've been boasting to us about how many lawyers they've hired compared to previous years.
Look, I ran to the State House of Representatives in South Carolina in 2006. I represented 35,000 people in a very small race. There were teams of lawyers involved in that race because machines did not function early in the race, and there was a legal dispute as to whether or not time would be extended. There are 50 different states, each of them with their own voting laws. Sometimes they vary by county within the states. Lawyers are part of the American political process. We had an outreach today, or last couple of days, asking for Republican lawyer volunteers. The Democrats did the same thing. So I hear what you're saying, and I know it sounds like it's unusual, but for us, it's not really that much different than what we deal with all of the time. Yes, your point that in 2000 it was Florida, that is correct. A lot of other states were very, very close until the end. We happened to be coming down to Florida at the very end. And you do see a lot of states tonight that could go either way at the late date. I get it, but it's not that far outside the ordinary.
Okay, we shall see what happens as the night goes on and the week goes on, maybe even the month goes on as well. Mr. McInerney, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and we have one more, by the way. New Mexico, we can say, is projected for Joe Biden. That is 5 electoral college votes. We are starting to fill in the map. But as we were hearing in that conversation, it looks, Andrew, like this is going to go on, could well go on over tonight, potentially into the next 2 or 3 days. And listening to Mr. Mulvaney there, who knows Donald Trump very well, who's his acting chief of staff, if it comes down to Pennsylvania, and we're very happy with the result in Pennsylvania, it will, as the President himself has said, be an election that could potentially be decided through the courts. If it follows the Florida trajectory, it will be decided in the courts, but then it means it ends up in the Supreme Court. And at the moment, the US Supreme Court is 6-3 conservative versus Democratic liberal members of the Supreme Court. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm saying that is the legal signposting that keep an eye on, because we may not get those results from Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania until Thursday or Friday. James Clayton is in Las Vegas, Nevada for us. Las Vegas, of course, home for lots of union workers, a place that has been decimated by the coronavirus, because all of those hotels on the Strip, which might now be normally full of people partying, they can't be full of people, there's nobody there, they can't be staying in them. Which way does Nevada, Nevada's so interesting, it's small, and yet it could
Well, Sheila, you've joined me on the last 30 seconds. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Just to say, the polling hasn't actually closed yet. There have been some technical problems here in Las Vegas. All sorts of huge queues here this morning, doing in the sun. So it won't be closed for 45 minutes here in Las Vegas. Right. Here, huge issues.
No, it's good.
Massive.
It's nice. It's always nice when somebody's at the end. Thank you. I appreciate you logging on, saying hi, drink, a couple of liters.
Donald Trump, or are they going to the Democrats? The Democrats run the state here. So a very interesting sort of battle here. The other thing, of course, is the team votes.
Thank you, everybody.
30% of the population.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, everybody that donated. Thank you, everybody that watched.
Which way will they go?
Thank you, everybody that's watching the video later on.
Very different.
And we'll see you Friday.
Here, so we're very interested to see what will happen on the night. At the moment, it's close to 4.